the regularly scheduled meeting of the Parks and Recreation Commission for Wednesday, April 26th, 2023. May we have the roll call, please?
Chair McGill,
Here?
Vice Chair Feck,
Present.
Commissioner Aldana,
Present.
Commissioner Chang,
Present.
Commissioner Clark,
Here.
Commissioner Lesnar Buxton,
You.
Commissioner Anander LaBerge. Absent.
Okay, thank you so much. And do we have any changes to the agenda?
We do not.
Okay, thanks. All right, any written public comment? We did get the one letter yesterday associated with agenda item 6. I didn't see anything else. Is there anything else? Okay. And that brings me to public comment. Any member of the public may address the commission for up to 2 minutes on any subject within the jurisdiction of the commission that is not scheduled for a public discussion before the commission. The total amount of time for public comment will be 15 minutes. If you're here to speak on the budget, that will come later in the meeting. And I don't have any speaker slips for public comment. Do we have anything online?
No attendees.
Okay, great, thank you very much. That brings us to the Youth Council report. Do we have someone here today? Welcome.
Hello. Okay. Good afternoon, Parks and Recreation Commission. My name is Tiago Eckstein, and I serve as Treasurer of the Youth Council. Today, I'd like to provide a brief update on our recently held 2023 Youth Speak Out. On Saturday, April 8th, the Santa Barbara Youth Council held the 2023 Youth Speak Out coffee with a council member at the Palm Park Beach House. Using the funding we received from the 2023 Youth Making Change Grant, the Youth Council prepared this event designed to strengthen the bridge between our local government and teens in our community. We used this funding to provide catering services, purchase writing materials such as pens and notepads and name tags. With support from Parks and Recreation staff and the food bank program, we also received a donation of fresh fruits for our event. The Youth Council Speak Out featured a fantastic panel that included Councilmember Oscar Gutierrez, Councilmember Kristen Sneddon, Chief of Police Kelly Gordon, and Executive Director of MOVE SB, Heather Deutsch. Our panelists provided their specific insight on environmental, transportation, safety, and community matters here in Santa Barbara, with a specific lens on how they apply to youth and teens in our community. Similar to the Candidates Forum that we held a few years back, our event featured questions prepared ahead of time by the Youth Council, as well as questions that our attending teens and youth submitted to ask the panelists. The Youth Council was honored to invite attending teens to directly ask those questions to the panelists. In preparation for this event, the Youth Council worked with our advisor to develop an event agenda and collect participated questions ahead of time. The Youth Council also prepared an event flyer and an event digital brochure, which we had at the event itself. We had a lot of success in promoting the Youth Speak Out through press releases, social media, and extending invitations to other youth that we know at our schools and in other leadership groups. Our work in letting our fellow students and friends know the importance of connecting with local leaders allowed us to surpass our attendance goal and host 30 attendees at the event. And this event not only allowed us to connect with other teens and uplift their voices on local issues, but it has informed us on the work that still needs to be done in our community for youth and teens. We really look forward to using what we've learned in this event to take action and continue advocating for teens and youth in our community. Overall, we are extremely thankful to have received overwhelming support from other teens in our community and from our government officials. Parks and Recreation Commission, we thank you for your time. Can we answer any questions that the commission may have?
Thank you very much, and I'm really pleased to hear that was a success. I mean, it's, what can I say? It's civic engagement at the highest level in the city. It's important, and I look forward, if you do summarize any of your findings, any actions coming forward. I would certainly look forward to hearing about those in subsequent reports, or even out in social media as you go forward. Okay, great, thank you. Commissioner Aldana.
Yes, that's an awesome report. Looks like you guys are staying very busy, and the reports just get better and better. And thank you for everything you do.
Yeah, thanks
Thank
very
you.
much, great. All right, once again, we've got a high bar, so I will move to the Commissioner Committee assignment reports, and I'll start with Commissioner Aldana.
Okay. I did attend the Dwight Murphy when is the Salud Carvajal gave the $1.5 million check. So I went over there for that little
Yeah,
gathering.
thank you for that, yeah.
Sure. You are welcome.
Commissioner Clark.
I attended the Street Tree Advisory Committee meeting. We're going to talk in length about each item that was on that agenda. And I did attend the Youth Culinary Arts Program graduation with Chair McGill, and that was wonderful to see. It was a really good event, so thanks to all involved in that.
And I'm going to go all the way to the end. Commissioner Lesnar Buxton.
I was unable to attend the youth council meeting.
Okay, thank you. Vice Chair Feck. I skipped you, I'm sorry. How come, okay.
I attended a youth council meeting this week, and they were interviewing for new members, which was really cool to see. And then also they did kind of a retrospective on the Youth Speak Out event and talked about like action items and what went well and what didn't go well. So it was fun to sit in on that conversation.
Great, thanks. And I apologize. Commissioner Chang.
That's okay, the best is for last. I was able to attend the golf subcommittee. The specifics of some of the capital projects were discussed. Santa Barbara takes its golf very seriously, and there are many stakeholders involved.
What I can tell, every golfer takes their golf very seriously. And I will, let's see, I went to the Park Foundation meeting, which was last week, and we started the review of the revised bylaws, which we've received. And then, as Commissioner Clark said, I was also at the Chef Apprentice graduation dinner, which was basically standing room only. I mean, we'll hear about it in the director's report. It was quite an event. All right, I think that takes us out of committee assignment reports. And commission and staff communications, do we have anything?
We do not.
Okay, great, thank you. And how about ceremonial items?
No ceremonial items either.
Oh, okay. All right, so then we are at the summary of council actions. Does anybody have any questions? I have a couple. Just quick ones. Just a curiosity question, the sanctuary centers, what are they using the parking lot for?
They have a construction project across the street, so this is going to be a parking area for the construction folks.
Oh, okay,
as
so
well
they're
as-
using the parking area to park. Okay,
Yes.
that's actually, I wasn't sure if there was a special event or something going on. And then the final, and I probably asked this last year, but I have forgotten, just when you look at the service agreements for the recreation programs, Lobster Joe's kind of stands out with its 90%.
Yeah, so each of our different service providers negotiates with us to determine what that percentage share is going to be, and it's really based on a variety of factors, but that can include how much it takes on their end in terms of supplies, services, staffing to put on the program. And Lobster Joe's is one that really is, I will plug the camp now, amazing camp because it's everything you could possibly want to do on the beach for a day. And so they do have relatively high costs, and that's how we end up negotiating a rate that is a 90-10 split in that case.
Yeah, and I guess there becomes the conversation of at what point is diminished returns to the point and they return to the Parks and Recreation Department itself, but I know it's a very popular program. Yeah. Okay, I think, and if no one else has any comments on council actions, that takes us to the minutes of the last meeting, with the recommendation being that the commission waive the reading and approve the minutes of the meeting of March 22nd. So I will entertain a motion if there is one. Commissioner Clark?
I will make a motion that we waive the reading and approve the minutes of the regular meeting of March 22nd, 2023.
Commissioner Aldana?
I'll second.
All right, discussion? All right, we ready to vote? Has everybody voted and locked their vote? Okay, I did that last time. Are we there? Yay, okay. Okay, and that passes. So we now move on to the street trees. Mr. Volpe, welcome.
Good
So we'll
afternoon.
start, okay.
Good afternoon, Chair McGill and Commissioners. The first item up for your review is two trees, two Quercus agrifolia located at 3411, requested for removal. The grouping is, the application is requesting two trees because the area is crowded. Stating crowding and general upkeep being difficult. There are 3 trees in that area, and only 2 of the trees are being requested for removal. The Street Tree Advisory Committee met on site, noting that the trees were in good health and seeing that they were growing underneath a larger mature oak tree behind them. The Street Tree Advisory Committee is making a recommendation to allow removal of one of the trees. That tree in particular grows predominantly toward the street right of way and is also alleviating crowding. So the committee recommend that the commission approve the removal of the tree recommended for removal closest to the curb. There is one tree closer to the curb, but it was not requested for removal. Could be a little confusing.
Okay, great, thank you. Does anybody have any questions? Yeah, I have, okay, let's go ahead, Commissioner Aldana.
Do you foresee sidewalk at any point? Anytime soon?
Chair McGill and Commissioner Aldana, we don't see the Quercus agrifolia create a lot of hardscape disruption. It's very low impact. It's hard to think of a tree that disturbs hardscape less than the Quercus agrifolia in terms of the trees that are located there. All in general probably would never do much damage.
Okay, so but regarding sidewalk, you don't see any sidewalk?
Chair McGill and Commissioner Aldana, no, there's currently, to my knowledge, no plan for putting in sidewalks. Is that the question?
Yes, that was a question.
Yeah,
Thank you.
no sidewalks at this.
I just have a question for clarification on the classification of the request, because my understanding is that it's the tree basically closest to the road is not up for removal, correct? And then it's the next 2 in that are, but they're classified as street trees? Are they street trees?
Chair McGill, that's correct, yes.
How?
Chair McGill and really to Commissioner Aldana's probably question is there within 6 feet behind the sidewalk. So that's the general rule of thumb that we go by. If a tree exists behind that and the road right-of-way is not fully built out, meaning that there would be sidewalks, then they would be considered street trees. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, I mean, it answers my question, but boy, I should have paced it. If you say it's so, it's so. I'm fine. Okay, does anybody else have any questions? All right, Commissioner Chang.
So the applicant talks about sort of their desired outcome to make room for the third tree. Is that the expectation? Is that what we expect to happen upon removal?
Chair McGill and Commissioner Chang, yes, to give canopy space to other trees that are competing for space in a small environment. And again, the predominant factor that causes this is a large lateral branch from a tree that's behind this group that is much older, much more mature, and it's kind of impeding the vertical growth of a lot of these three trees. The one that's furthest from it, not requested for removal, is more vertical. So to answer Commissioner Chang's question is to say that the removals are requested to give space and allow a canopy to develop.
Okay, thank you. Does that address your question? Yeah. Okay, great. Commissioner Clark?
I'd just like to make a comment since I was present. That's really loud today. The applicant, he didn't have a grasp of the principles of good forest management. And so when STAC went out there, they were like, oh, well, you could do this, you can do this, and that would make space to create the environment that you want to help these other trees thrive. And I was like, oh, okay. So he was completely in accord with what I got from it. He was in accord with our recommendation, the recommendation that we have from STAC.
Okay, great.
That helps just kind of pin it down a little bit.
Okay, yeah, it does. Thanks so much. With that, I think I'm going to turn it to public comment. I do not have any speaker slips here. Do we have anybody online? Okay. With that, then I will take it for any further discussion or a motion as appropriate. Commissioner Aldana?
As I look at this, wouldn't it make more sense to keep the bigger, mature tree rather than the smaller ones?
The big mature tree is being kept.
Chair McGill and Commissioner Aldana, the larger mature oak tree is not a part of this removal request at all. And the only reason it's brought up is just because it does have a lateral branch that goes over the canopy of these smaller trees. So it is not requested for removal.
Thank you.
Okay. Any other discussion or a motion? If there is no one making a motion, I'll make a motion that we agree with the Street Tree Committee recommendation to partially approve the street tree removal request at 3411 Calle Noguera to approve the removal of the second tree in from the curb. Commissioner Clark?
I'll second.
Okay, great. If there is no further discussion, we will go to a vote. Vote?
No, I have a discussion, but
Okay.
not about our motion. I just, real quick before we move from this agenda item, did you guys see the giant redwood in the front yard of that house? Mm-hmm. It was hit by lightning some years ago, and half of it is still standing and growing again, just in case you're wondering what happened to that tree.
Thanks. Okay, now we can vote. All right, we all locked in? Great, okay. And if we pass. Shoreline Drive.
Chair McGill and Commissioners, the second tree for your review is located at 1244 Shoreline Drive. This is a Brazilian pepper. The applicant is requesting removal stating comprehensive property redevelopment, specifically a driveway approach that would come into conflict where the tree exists now. The application also offers 3 replacement trees, 2 olives on the other side of the property, and 1 peppermint willow in the general area where the tree is being lost or proposed for removal, rather. While meeting on site, the committee found the tree to be in good health, mature, well-maintained. They also noted that the update of property is a reasonable request and made a recommendation that the commission approve the removal with discussion taking place that the 1 tree, the peppermint willow in the same area on the property be changed to a comparable size and density at maturity, with the finding that a reasonable and practical development of property on which the tree is located requires the removal of the tree.
Okay, great, thank you. Does anybody have any questions? Okay, I do okay. I guess I want to explore that recommendation a little bit more. And I don't, I know what olive trees look like, I don't know anything about a peppermint willow. I'm curious to know 2 things. One, how does the committee, how do we manage what tree goes in there if there's a single tree? But what I'm really curious about is what's being proposed is a 3-for-1 replacement ratio, which would normally have us doing backflips. And what looks like is being recommended is a 1-for-1 replacement ratio, but with a different tree. And I'm curious to know, one, what is the different tree that you would be thinking about that would not, that's better than the 3-for-1 replacement ratio, and just the overall rationale in terms of canopy, in terms of the neighborhood. It's not completely making sense to me, I'll be honest.
Chair McGill and commissioners, it's an interesting condition. The peppermint willow, especially the burgundy, is what we call almost like a patio tree. It's very thin, not dense canopy, and I think the Street Tree Advisory Committee had concerns that the proposed replants or replacement trees would not replace the significant canopy loss or density of the tree being proposed for removal.
Including the olives.
Including the olives, like focusing heavily on this one tree because it appeared the discussion centered around it because it was going to be in the same general area of that property.
Okay.
If that follows.
It sort of follows. I'm going to say it sort of follows. And then what kind of tree is being, and am I right that it's a 1-for-1 replacement being recommended as opposed to the 3-for-1?
Chair McGill, it's 3-for-1.
It is 3-for-1, but it's the willow. Okay, so.
2 olives
Okay.
on the other side of the property, as well as the
Okay.
3rd tree being this
Okay,
contested.
Okay, so the recommendation is actually that a 3-for-1 replacement, but that the willow be something else.
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. I'm with you. Anybody have any additional questions? If not, we do have a speaker who, yes, go ahead.
Can I just ask a question?
Yes, please, yeah.
So, Mr. Volpe, how would you measure the density of a replacement tree?
Chair McGill and Commissioner Clark, how would you measure the density? I think in knowing tree species types, the the canopy density of a peppermint tree is very light, flimsy. How would you measure it? Canopy mass, I guess, by biomass? Yeah, yeah. Carbon offset, that kind of thing, shade it can produce, overall maturity, canopy, and I think shade it can produce, yeah.
Because it just seems like it would be hard in the very beginning to establish a tree with similar density unless you're planting something that old and mature.
Chair McGill and Commissioner Clark, I agree to that. I think that we really look at it from a stance of what is the tree going to do at maturity. And we don't really control the size planted or what that canopy density will be, but look at the species profile. What is it capable of doing? And in this case, the committee, knowing that tree species that's proposed quite well, they're looking at the canopy density and the overall mature development of that tree are we really replacing, even though it's 3-to-1, are we really replacing it with a valuable tree that can achieve size and density?
I guess I'm just used to seeing, usually in the recommendation by staff, you'll usually say a tree who has the potential or the ability to achieve, and this one just says plant a new tree of comparable size and density. That's just one thing that just threw me a little bit.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. We do have a public speaker. I'm really sorry, I can't read your handwriting. So please state your name and we can fix it when we...
Sure.
And you'll have 2 minutes once the clock starts.
Okay. My name is Justin Manuel. I'm the landscape architect representing the project and the owners who are here today as well. And I'm here to hopefully shed light on the size of these trees. I might go a little bit over 2 minutes, but to shed light on the proposed trees and the existing tree, and then to also ask that the tree removal is accepted without the condition, of course. So I'll cite the Cal Poly, Dr. Matt Ritter, who is a professor at Cal Poly, has a website which is kind of a standard for tree sizing and tree characteristics. He characterizes the Brazilian pepper tree with a potential maturity height of 30 feet and a potential maturity canopy width of 15 to 30 feet. He characterizes the olive tree with a potential maturity height of 30 feet, so the same as the Brazilian pepper, and a potential canopy width of 25 to 30 feet, so potentially bigger than the pepper tree. We're proposing 2 olives, so in instance, doubling the biomass of the existing pepper tree. So that's doubling the biomass, and then that's not speaking of the third tree, which is the peppermint tree that's been talked about. I pulled from San Marcos Growers, which is a nursery here in town, very respected nursery, to get their characteristics of that. The height that they list is 15 to 25 feet, so almost as tall as the peppermint tree, and the width as 10 to 15 feet, which is more narrow than the peppermint tree, which we selected because we're going to have, as was stated, a driveway that goes near it, and then the garage is going to come out a little bit more. And then we're pushed up against the property line. So that's why we selected a more narrow tree. So we think with doubling the biomass plus the third tree, that we would be doing enough. And I think this should also be considered in light of the tree.
I need to ask you to wrap up.
Sure. That was just approved, which is a coast live oak that had no mitigation, no landscape improvements, which you did approve. So I think it would be prudent to request no more conditions.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
Thank you very much. All right. Do we have any discussion? I would like to ask that you comment on the biomass of the olive trees and the potential of the olive trees. In particular, I have to say, I have to say, I understand the applicant's rationale for having a narrow tree by the driveway, by the way, so yeah.
correct. Chair McGill and Commissioners, it's difficult to argue with Matt Ritter. And I think that the numbers there stated are correct about the olive trees. The only caveat being that the peppermint willow has been very hard to structure. It can achieve a height of what's proposed there, but can it actually keep its branches, hold together? But again, understanding where it's being placed, it seems appropriate. Oh, yeah, and I think that was Stack's reasoning and discussion is what I'm getting at is.
I
Yeah.
didn't really actually follow that in terms of the peppermint willow. Could you repeat that?
Yeah. In terms of the olives, I think the numbers that the architect is giving are correct in terms of biomass and mature size. In terms of the peppermint willow, the discussion from the Street Tree Advisory Committee is that while it's proposed as maybe a 15 to 20 foot height tree at maturity, it's difficult to ever see that tree produce and maintain that. It has long branches that break out. Its density is poor, and I think their discussion was like that's not really a great tree for longevity in that scenario.
Okay. Okay, thanks. Commissioner Chang.
Can you talk about the recommendation for planting a tree in the same general location of the existing tree? Why that qualifier? What does that encompass? Like specifically the same general location part. What does that mean? Where can they plant it?
Chair McGill and Commissioner Chang, the committee discussed that at length, trying to keep biomass in that part of the property, trying to keep shade, some type of tree plant there. So I think that became a focus of the discussion of what is going to kind of hold that spot now that the neighborhood, the community, this property is losing this anchor in that location. So that became sort of the focal point of the committee's discussion, was how to keep that plant there, as well as is this sizable enough? And there wasn't a lot of discussion about the two olives after that, after the focal point became this particular tree.
Okay, thank you. Commissioner Aldana.
As far as the garage, how much is it going to be extended out?
Chair McGill and Commissioner Aldana, I don't have the plans in front of me, but I believe it to be about 6 to 8 feet. The footprint being.
By chance, do you have it?
Is that close enough? Wait, if that's close, yeah, thanks. Yeah, and they're in your packet, yeah.
So 6 feet.
Yeah. Okay, well, since I'm not seeing my screen light up, I will light it up. I guess I understand sort of this sort of desire to not have that canopy go away. I also, and there seems to be a lot of energy around that particular species of tree, the willow, but I'm kind of not, I'm struggling to get past the reality that on the other side of the property, there's 2 olive trees proposed that more than offset what is being removed. And I kind of think maybe that got a little bit lost sight of in the discussion. So I am going to make a motion that we approve the application request as made originally, which is the request to remove the tree on the condition that there are 3 trees, 2 olives, and the willow, the peppermint willow, the other one. And Commissioner Clark? Okay, so we have a motion and a second, and if there is no,
Did you have a finding? Do we-
oh, and the finding is, thank you very much. And the finding is that a reasonable and practical development of the property requires removal of the trees or trees whose removal is sought. And so we have okay, so we have a motion and a second. If we have no further discussion, I will go to a vote. All right, are we locked in? All right, we have a majority decision. Okay, thank you very much. And on to our last one, Mural Road, which is a road I know well.
Chair McGill and Commissioners, the third item for your review is the removal request of 2 Monterey cypress located in the setback at 2526 Morel Road. The applicant is requesting the removal of the 2 trees, stating overall loss of vigor and canopy decline. During the review, the STAC committee noted that the trees were in significant decline. They found rot in the trunk, branching, etc. And the committee recommend that the commission approve the removals on the condition that the applicant replace with a setback tree that can achieve 35 feet in height and maturity, with the finding that principles of good forest management will be best served by the proposed removals.
Thank you. Does anybody have any questions? Commissioner Chang?
Was there any reasoning behind the 1 abstention?
Chair McGill and Commissioner Chang, I believe one of the committee members had worked on the property or for the property at one level, so they abstained from voting at that time.
Okay, and Commissioner Clark? Commissioner Clark?
I know, I'm trying to think of how I want to phrase what I want to ask. Will there be any mitigation for the tree that was removed prior to our visit?
Oh, it's that one.
I'll ask you about that later.
Chair McGill and Commissioner Clark. Okay, yeah.
All right. With that, I don't see any further questions. I'll turn it over to public speaking. I do not have any slips. Do we have anybody online?
No, we do not.
Okay, and then we'll open it up for discussion and/or a motion as appropriate.
I can make a motion to agree with the Street Tree Advisory Committee recommendation to approve the removals on the condition that the applicant, the removals at 2526 Mural Road of the 2 Monterey cypress, on the condition the applicant replace with a setback tree that can achieve 35 feet in height at maturity.
Thank you. Commissioner Aldana?
I'll second the motion.
Okay. Unless we have any further discussion, I will go to a vote. And we are there. All right. And I think that takes us out, doesn't it? Yep, thank you very much. Okay, and that takes us to our director's report. So, Ms. LeBlanc, over to you.
Yeah, Chair McGill and Commissioners, I'm pleased to share several things that happened in the month of April. Earlier this month, as was mentioned earlier, we had a graduation celebration for one of our teen programs, the Chef Apprentice program. So on Saturday, April 8th at the West Side Neighborhood Center, 21 students graduated from that program. This year's class represented students from all of our region's public schools, as well as several charter and private schools. The program is really a kind of cool and unique program that we offer where students get an opportunity to get a sense of the ins and outs of commercial food preparation. They learn about health and safety standards, nutrition and meal planning, and food prep. So the event, which is open to the public and really a lot of fun, allows the kids to serve a 4-course meal to their friends and family. This year we had about 150 attendees, and as well as a small graduation ceremony. So we wouldn't be able to put this program on if it weren't for co-sponsored participation that we have with Jolly Brothers Catering Company, Chef, which is coordinated by Chef Donald Harden, our own staff member Anita, and I'm going to mispronounce her last name, Domincello Ho, and as well as Troy Peters, who's a local chef and a graduate of SBCC's Culinary Arts class. I also would like to share that we held our first volunteer trail restoration event of the year this year, and also had very high turnout. About 100 people came out to help us restore trails. That allowed us to do about 4.5 miles of trail work, which is really incredible and very much needed after all of the winter storms. Not only did we get storm damage, but then we got a proliferation of vegetation growing in and along the trails. So this was, again, something that we couldn't do without the partnerships, the great partnerships that we have, and in this case, it would be Santa Barbara County Parks, the U.S. Forest Service, Montecito Trails Foundation, Los Padres Forest Association, and the Sage Trail Alliance. So the volunteers were able to cover sections of Rattlesnake Canyon Trail, as well as Hot Springs Trail and Old Pueblo Trail, which are in unincorporated county areas. And I'd also like to share, as was mentioned earlier, that we were very pleased to be able to accept $1.5 million in federal funds through Congressman Salud Carvajal's office, which will support renovation of the Dwight Murphy Field. So on Friday, April 14th, we were able to hold a press conference there with several council members, as well as our mayor, Randy Rouse, and 2nd District Supervisor Laura Capps, Parks and Recreation Commissioners, Parks and Recreation staff, and the Victoria Strong and others from the Gwendolyn Strong Foundation. So very excited about that park and that project moving, hitting another milestone. So talking about looking ahead at future tentative commission agenda items, we are looking at upcoming items on the Parma Park Sustainable Trail Plan. The Sustainable Trails project is underway right now, so we'll have lots to report there. We are also anticipating a city advisory group training, which will be led by staff from the clerk's office as well as the city attorney's office, and be able to speak in depth to our capital improvement program. And with that, I have open for any questions.
Okay, thank you very much. Does anybody have any questions or comments they would like to make? No? Okay, well, it really was quite a dinner, at that Chef Apprentice dinner. The guests that I brought just looked at the menu and said, wow, this is so fancy. It was not what they were expecting. And it was fabulous, and it was fabulous to see how well everybody worked together, and the teamwork that goes into that program is really exceptional. It really is exceptional. Yeah, it's a fabulous report all around, a good month. Okay, that takes us to our report on youth employment services, and who do we have doing that?
We have a Recreation Supervisor, Michelle McDonald, and Neighborhood Outreach Coordinator, Ricardo Venegas.
And I see Rich Hanna taking up the rear. All right, thank you and welcome.
Good afternoon. I'm Michelle McDonald, Recreation Supervisor here with Community Services. And off to my right here is Ricardo Venegas. He's our Recreation Coordinator over at the Franklin Neighborhood Center. And so we just want to thank you very much for allowing us to speak this afternoon, giving us a chance to kind of honk our horn on the good work that we're doing here with Parks and Recreation and the Community Services Division, specifically to talk about the youth employment services and some of the programs and partnerships that we do here. I also want to introduce Nicole Morgan. She's back here. You are familiar with her through Youth Council, and she also is heavily involved and oversees the Job Apprentice Program in addition to Youth Council. So we have a mixture of great work here between Ricardo and Nicole. So to talk a little bit about the Job Apprenticeship Program, its background, we also want to talk about the program objectives and benefits, and then the eligibility requirements needed and is necessary for this program. And then I'll be turning it over to Ricardo, who will be speaking on the Goodwill Industries Partnership, and then we'll follow up and end with, or conclude with the budget and financial information regarding these programs. So to begin with, as you can see, the program and the purpose is to provide low-income individuals here in our community with the same opportunity as others to gain and develop their job readiness skills that also then, transfers over to a stronger, more vibrant, responsible adult here in our community. We also work to develop the life skills by providing training leading into their employment that will last them a lifetime. It would not only be job readiness skills, but time management, financial management. What do you do when you get that paycheck? Where do you go? How do you manage your money? So we're not just trying to employ kids to teach them necessarily just about the work environment, but the life as well, because they tie in to try to create a very cohesive, balanced work-life balance overall. So to tell you a little bit about the Job Apprenticeship Program, it's been managed by the Parks and Recreation Development since its inception, approximately since 1979. So before I came here, this well-run program has been established, largely here through Ricardo, who's been with the city for approximately 26 years. So the program was developed in its early stages. It's kind of changed its format over the years, but we've always tried to focus in on the low-income residents. But early on in the program's development, there was a tendency to more focus on individuals or juveniles that were going through the court systems through misbehavior. So while we do still try and strive and very much focus on the individuals that have a low income status here in the community, not so much on the aspect of the juvenile justice system, because there's plenty of other organizations here in town that really hone in and focus more on that. So we're on a more broader aspect, but never want to lose sight on the need to really focus in on the kids that are underserved in our community, as well as the low income. They don't necessarily have the resources made available to them that others do. Okay. Over the course of the years, it's best estimate that very conservatively, nearly 3,000 kids have come through under the Job Apprenticeship Program. The job paid training program, the readiness, occurs in a more structured fashion in the summer months only. Ricardo works hard throughout the year to provide mentorship to individuals as needed throughout the whole year. He does not deny them any mentorship opportunities. However, the structured program, where there's a job readiness component and program that is done in the summer months when kids are available. They should be in school year-round, I mean, during the academic year, so in the summer months when they have the time to focus, that is where the more structured program comes in, to where they have the job readiness aspect before they take placement within the city under various departments. Some of the objectives and benefits, as you can see here on the screen, with the low-income youth, we try to provide them a wide range of departments in which they can be placed. So whether that's the city clerk's office, with Parks and Recreation, maybe in IT, we want to open up the whole city to this program and not just put the kids into Parks and Rec. We, of course, offer them Parks and Recreation, but when there's an opportunity to go elsewhere, something that might be better meet their needs and interests, we put them in different departments that are willing to take these kids on at entry-level positions. So the benefits are that they receive hands-on paid work experience, and they develop the transferable skills that can be used not only with their employment, but also in life in general. And it gives them an opportunity to acquire and get a feel for what the workplace is. Whether they're ready or not, their age, it's time to get employed and learn those skills, and we're able to do so in a very calm, nurturing, safe environment, which then, of course, improves their employability. The eligibility requirements for the youth here are to be of low income, and if you're 18 years or younger, to provide a valid work permit and be able to demonstrate a minimal GPA of 2.0. The low income status, how that is recognized, is using the AMI, the Area Media Income. So if demonstrated that a family that has a $100,100 income for a family of 4, that qualifies based on the number of people within their family. So there's a huge need here in Santa Barbara. It's a very expensive community, so there are a lot of individuals that qualify. However, not everybody that starts a program finishes the program. There's various reasons. Perhaps they chose another path, another employer, or if they don't have the support from their family, if they don't have the transportation, it can make it very challenging. So we start off at a higher level of entries than what the program provides at the end, but that's not so much a reflection of the program as it is the various challenges these underserved children or underserved youth are faced with. They also need to demonstrate a negative TB test and employment eligibility requirements such as, ID, Social Security, and some of the basics. This is just a little snapshot of the graduation class from last year. That's just at the end of the year, we do a celebration and recognition where we get a chance to honor the kids and the successes of their program. They are spread throughout the city. Again, not just with Parks and Rec, but any other department that has a need and availability to take on these kids for the summer months. Again, these are entry-level positions here in the city. So I think we're going to go ahead and Ricardo at this time is going to speak on the Goodwill Industries and the partnership that we have established with them.
Good afternoon, Chair McGill and Commissioners. As Michelle mentioned, we do provide employment services throughout the year, not just in the summer. And one of the ways in which we do that is with a partnership that started in 2021 with Goodwill Industries of Ventura and Santa Barbara. So the Job Apprenticeship Program and our partnership with Goodwill Industries is pretty much in terms of what the youth have to go through. The youth that we bring into the program with the city are basically coming in and providing employment. They're provided with employment services, just like the Job Apprenticeship Program. The age group is 16 to 21 years of age. The majority of them are extremely low income, and Goodwill does follow the same guidelines as we do in terms of having a financial need and other concerns with the youth. One of the things that we also make sure that we provide is the proper onboarding training. Goodwill takes care of all the same things that we do with the city. Once the onboarding is completed with Goodwill Industries, then their youth are placed into a job site within the city of Santa Barbara. And we have here some of the departments that are currently taking youth. That includes human resources, community development, parks and recreation, city clerk's office, information technology, as well as parks and recreation at some of the community centers as well. The youth participants that we're getting from Goodwill are receiving 170 hours of paid employment training. Goodwill does match whatever the salary is being paid by the particular job site. So in other words, if a participant comes in as a maintenance one, then Goodwill will match whatever that entry salary range is for that participant. So some will come in at minimum wage, and others will come in somewhere in between, up to $22 per hour. That is what Goodwill matches. Since the partnership began in 2021, we've had 20 youth participants that have successfully completed the program, 2 of which were hired by the city as hourlies. We expect the same kind of success in the years to come, and we hope that some of the youth that are out there in the community listening to this reach out to us or reach out directly to Goodwill Services. And here you have some of our success stories. And with that.
Okay, so if you get a chance to read the testimonial and the prior slide with Jesse Carachuri, he came from Goodwill and he's with us at the West Side Neighborhood Center. And we cannot say enough great things about him. And he had done his time, his initial hours with Sarah Gorman at the city clerk office. And she called Ricardo and was like, oh, I hate to give him up, I hate to give him up. And so we had an opening at West Side. I'm like, well, if he's that good, we'll take him. And so it was a great opportunity for Jesse, and he's still with us today. So it proves to be such a great program, a very solid program, and one that proves to serve the city in so many ways that there's really nothing negative about that program. So we're excited to be a part of it. Regarding the budget and financial information, regarding the job apprenticeship program in specific, the budget itself for the FY23 has $34,803 committed to the program, and that will allow roughly 37 apprentices to receive the approximate 20 hours of job readiness training prior to them being assigned or accepted to another department here within the city. So we call it 40 hours of, you might say, transitional time. So once they complete their 20 hours of job readiness training, the 40 hours serves as an opportunity for the individual to go to their assignment and make sure it's a good fit. So what they see and what they hear leading up to their program, Nicole does a wonderful job with meeting with these youth one-on-one to really get to know them. So when they go to their job placement, it's a good fit, not just for the city, but for the individual themselves. So that when they do get out of school or when they are ready, perhaps they might stay. So if there's any questions or comments at this time.
Thank you. All right. Okay. I can't remember which one's first, which was second. Thank you very much. That's great. This is such a great program. I will start with Commissioner Clark.
How do you find your kids, or how do they find you?
Well, there's various sources in which we obtain this youth. A lot of it is through word of mouth. A lot of kids that have been through the program that know Ricardo, that know Nicole, and throughout the year, we kind of always have our eyes and ears open for an opportunity to draw someone in and offer our services. Of course, we provide the position of job apprenticeship on our city's website, which may only go so far, but then Nicole does a wonderful job of outreaching to the schools themselves and to the counselors and guidance counselors. So it's not just we sit here and wait for them kids to come to us. we go to them as far as we can go, and then it just always seems to work between the schools and word of mouth especially, becomes our success rate.
Okay, Commissioner, does that take you out? Yep. Okay, Commissioner Chang.
Yeah, I'm curious what the trend of the number of apprentices has been. You've budgeted for 37. I'm curious how that's changed over time and, you know, if that's being maxed out every year.
Well, I've been here 3 years, 2 of which have been the pandemic, so I can't really speak to the history, but I think Ricardo can give you a better the trends as far as the numbers being served.
Chair McGill, Commissioner Chang, yes, the trends have changed a bit, but I can tell you that prior to COVID, we had a very robust program in terms of funding and participants. COVID changed all of that, so right now we are regrouping and coming back and slowly building up again. But prior to that, and this goes in cycles, again, depending on the funding. We've had years where we were serving up to 150 youth, going all the way to 1979. And I know that because the previous person that managed the program was here a very long time, and I got a chance to see all his data on that. But I think we've averaged somewhere between 40 to 80 participants per year. In the last 20 years, our average has been about 50 participants per year. Now, these numbers that you see also do not include youth receiving job placement assistance and so forth. So we do a lot of that work as well, where we assist youth in being placed into the private sector and with other agencies. So the funding, again, fluctuates.
Got it, thanks.
Thank you. Commissioner Aldana.
Yes, I would just like to thank Ricardo because I've seen him in action, and thank you for all your patience, guidance, and direction for these youths. You've done a great job, and Nicole also, thank you.
Here, here. I guess my question, I mean, I think really Commissioner Chang touched on it in that discussion in terms of capacity. I mean, it just seems like a program that has so much to offer. I mean, what do you think the capacity should be? Just really, you know, what do you think you can sustain given your resource base and what you have, and what would it take to get there?
Chair McGill and commissioners, right now we're right where we need to be. Again, COVID changed a lot of things, and one of those things was the job placement opportunities. There's a lot of staff that are not available to supervise and train some of the youth, again, because of the COVID parameters that we have in place. But I think at some point when we build, hopefully we can get back to an average of 50 youth being offered paid employment services, and also being matched with the most appropriate mentor supervisors. So there's a lot of challenges there that we have to make sure are in place to ensure the successful outcome for the youth apprentice.
Sure, and the reason I'm asking the question is it just seems like it should be a bigger program, but obviously just throwing people in a job and having them have no resource also, you know, that would not serve anybody well.
Sure. Chair McGill, I'll just add to that. I think when you talk sustainability, we're pretty much at that number right now when you see 37 to 40 apprentices. There's two other considerations that go into this. One, when the program was first developed, youth apprentices were getting about 120 hours of paid training, and we really didn't feel like that was enough to sustain them through this program. So even though we're serving fewer youth than maybe what we were at historical levels, they're actually getting 2 times the amount of paid hours. So they're actually achieving closer to like 400 to 500 hours of paid training. The other note about sustainability is the number of departments that are willing to participate in this inside the city and take on those employees. And so what's unique about Parks and Recreation is we have a lot of hourly positions, so by nature we can hire these employees in and give them paid employment. A lot of the other internal departments within the city don't have hourly positions to absorb these apprentices in, which means they don't have the funds to pay them. So I would say right about now, from a sustainability standpoint, 40 is a good number given the way the program is trending.
Okay, thank you. And then in terms of job placement, you talked about the one job placement. Is there any kind of, I don't know, the word preferential always is, that's sort of loaded, that's a loaded word. But do these kids get any kind of inside track on possible employment once they go through the program?
Chair McGill, I think I can probably answer that. So the one success story that was there was the Goodwill person, Jesse, who works at the Westside Neighborhood Center, and we get less applicants through the Goodwill program. Many of the kids or the youth that participate in the Job Apprentice program in the summertime actually get employed full-time with our after-school programs and then go on to be camp counselors or administrative staff within the department or even in our parks division in terms of ground maintenance workers. So once they're transferred from the Job Apprentice program into a department, specifically Parks and Recreation, where we have those positions funded as part of our budget, they do just roll into that paid position moving forward. So it is I wouldn't call it preferential, but they're certainly fast-tracked into an employment opportunity.
Yeah, thanks very much, great. Anyone else? I'm not lighting up. So I think that takes us out. It's a great program. Really doing some good work there. So appreciate Nicole, thank you. And that takes us to our new business item, which is our annual budget discussion. And I see we're having a changing of the guard up front. Thanks, Jasmine. Okay, so while we are changing the guard up front, we need to have a 5-minute recess. So we will, I see 5:09 on the big clock. We will restart at 5:15. are resuming our meeting, and we are on agenda item 6, which is the recommended financial plan for 24-25. And I believe, Ms. Zachary, are you going to kick us off?
Chair McGill, members of the commission, yes, I will be doing the bulk of the presentation. I will be joined by Tina Nelson, who will present golf, as well as the last section related to our performance measures. I would also note that you have parks and recreation managers here to assist in answering questions and providing information, including Jasmine LeBlanc, Rich Hanna, Adam Porte, and then we also have Nathan Slack and Brett Volpe here from our forestry section, assuming they're going to stay for the long haul. But with that, to begin, this is a 2-year financial plan that we're presenting. Last year, when you received the budget, it was just the second year of a 2-year financial plan. If you recall, as we exited COVID, we were trying to determine what programs and services we could resume offering, both indoor and outdoor, really focused on recreation. We were coming out of some pretty significant budget reductions due to a lack of revenue citywide, and then departmental revenue. Going into this next 2-year budget and actually through 2030, the city is going to be making some probably significant organizational changes to address its need to be more fiscally sustainable. So part of today's presentation will address some of the things that we've been asked to do as a department in order to move in that direction. So to begin, I'll give a little department overview and then talk specifically about the general fund, both operating and capital, going over our revenue and expenditures, the reductions that we've been required to make, one staffing change, the capital projects that we have coming forward, and then, as I mentioned, Tina Nelson will talk about the Golf Fund and our new performance measurement system, City Outcomes for Reaching Excellence, which is replacing the 20-year-old P3 program. So we always like to start these budget presentations off with our mission. The parks end of the department was established in 1902 and recreation in 1929. So we are closing in on our 100-year anniversary of official recreation programs for the city of Santa Barbara. There was recreation before 1929, but an official department was actually created. But we have a broad mandate in this community to provide clean and safe parks, beaches, and recreation facilities, to enhance Santa Barbara's beauty, to promote stewardship and protection of natural habitats and environmental resources, and to provide quality recreation and cultural experiences and community services to improve the quality of life for Santa Barbara residents. We have many resources that we're responsible for. We have 60 parks and sports facilities, over 1,800 acres. Throughout our park system, we have playgrounds, we have swimming and wading pools, we have tennis and pickleball courts, volleyball courts. We manage the city's street trees, as well as trees within our developed parks and trees in open spaces. We have over 6 miles of beach that are within the city, and community gardens, any number of community buildings that provide different levels of service to the community. And then we also have other responsibilities as it relates to parkways and medians, which are in street rights of way and are not actual parks, but it's something that we do. And we manage 12 sports facilities. When you look at who does that, we have basically 82 full-time equivalent staff members. Commission will remember this time last year, the Creeks Division was part of our department. It's no longer part of our department. So the full-time equivalent staff numbers have decreased by 9. Of that, 81.5 are in the general fund. We manage our budget over 17 budget programs. So depending on the program that we have in the department, it's managed as an individual program depending on the purpose of that program, the extent to which that program can generate revenue, and what it actually does for the community. We also rely significantly on hourly staff hours. So these are part-time staff that help us with our summer camp programs, our after-school programs. They work in our park system. They take on special projects for the administration division. So we talked about initially delivery of service. It's not just us. So there's the department staff that are actively engaged in it, and we also work collaboratively with other city departments at times. We have a significant number of maintenance and management contracts, professional agreements, and personal services agreements that also enable us to provide the programs and services that we have. As an example, we have 65 independent contractors that do recreation programs. We have co-sponsorships with 14 different organizations, and we have probably on any one day between 10 and 20 contractors, whether they're trimming trees, helping us maintain our parks, providing professional services, cleaning restrooms, providing security where we need it. This is what enables us to actually implement the programs and services for Parks and Recreation. So to give you an overview of our budget, this includes the Golf Fund. Our recommended expense budget for fiscal year '24 is just over $27 million. Of that amount, the Golf Fund represents $4 million. So if you take that away, and when we start talking about general fund, the general fund budget is just over $23 million. Looking at each division, you can see how the spread goes. It's equally spread at this point between Parks and Recreation. Administration is smaller. We have a small miscellaneous grants fund. Shows is 0% only because it's not yet 1%. And then golf being 15% of our expense budget. Looking at our revenue as an overview, our recommended revenue is just under $12.5 million for fiscal year '24. Looking at golf again, you see $4.5 million. And that revenue stays entirely within the Golf Fund, both the expenditure and the revenue. The balance of the revenue split between Parks, Administration, and Recreation go to offset all of the program costs and expenses that we have. Your staff report does talk about the fact that we start with a general fund allocation each year. And the allocation this year, I believe, is for fiscal year '24 is $15 million. So as you can imagine, in order to fully fund our budget, we need to have revenue that makes up that difference. So skipping to the general fund, we have 3 divisions: Recreation, Administration, and Parks. This gives the commission an idea of how those revenues are shown across each division. Looking at where we are with our adopted budget for fiscal year '23, our adopted budget is just over $7.6 million. Going into '24 and '25, we have some proposed increases in revenue, and we'll get to that discussion in a little bit, but that revenue is really related to changes in programs. It's not necessarily new revenue, the unexpected. Some of it is changes in fees, and we'll be talking about fees as well. And some of it has to do with the services that the Parks Division provides to other city departments. When we look at revenues by division, this gives you a clearer sense of how it breaks. It's allocated by division. And I would very much like to add, we house a great deal of our departmental revenue in the Recreation Division, but the entire department is responsible for generating that revenue. So we can't have a project or a program in a park if we don't have a park and we're not maintaining that park. We have costs that are borne in different divisions that really enable us to provide the programs and services citywide. For the purposes of budgeting, we're able to show how we're able to capture and offset direct costs associated with recreation programs and services, but not a lot of those indirect costs. We house it in recreation because it's a link to the actual program or service that's happening by that recreation division. When we look at our revenue budget as a whole, this gives you a picture of how the city allocates money. So it's not, it's sort of not intuitive to someone who may not work in a city budget, but how money is allocated and set aside in our budget that we budget for. And you can see from this slide that service charges represent just over $5.5 million, and it's the bulk of the revenue that we get. And that comes from camps, facility rentals, adult and youth activity programs, sports, aquatics, a lot of the recreation activities that we do. The other revenues, those are largely reflective of what the Parks Division does. So we have a waterfront maintenance contract, so we do some maintenance work for the waterfront department. We have a small contract with the Santa Barbara Unified School District for park ranger services. And then we have a small distribution for Chase Pond Park maintenance. And then use of money and property, rents, as it relates to community center facility rentals, as well as fees. And then it also, when we talk about rents, it's the nonprofit lease agreements that we have in many of our community centers. Internal charges, as you can see, we receive some utility user tax revenue. So that comes in and gets allocated from from Public Works to parks for the purposes of street tree maintenance and parkways and median maintenance. None of those revenues, the UUT actually covers the entire cost. If you remember back to a slideshow you had recently about where our funds go, the general fund also supports street tree maintenance as well as parkway and median maintenance. Oops, I'm going backwards. Forward. There we go. 1, 2. So because we're starting this presentation off with revenue, we also want to be able to present our changes or proposed changes in fees going into both fiscal year 24 and 25, with a focus on 24. Even though it's a 2-year plan, the City Council adopts 1 year. So this time next year, we'll be back before the Commission with the second year of the 2-year plan, and sometimes there are changes, depending on economic conditions, program changes, any number of things could happen. So each year, the department staff, and it's largely our recreation staff because they're very, very in tune to everything that they do and the fees that we charge. We look at a number of different things. We look at opportunities to maximize participation. We look at whether our programs and services provide a level of community benefit that is of high enough value, because there are many other service providers in Santa Barbara as well, and that has changed. In my tenure in the department over time, the number of opportunities that young people have to participate in rec programs and services has grown significantly. We look at our target audience, and that varies in terms of what we're trying to do. So Commission just had a presentation about our youth employment, our youth apprentice program. That is wholly subsidized by the general fund. And while we could grow the program, that means it requires additional general fund allocations. We look to our partner departments to perhaps provide that funding, and they're not always able to do that. We look at competition, because as I just mentioned, there's a number of service providers in the community, and sometimes it makes more sense for a different organization to do that service and to do it well. And then we look at cost recovery. As we talk about our expenditure budget, one of the challenges we face every year, we get a base budget, but that base budget does not take into consideration increased costs. So increase for fuel, for example, or when the city raises its water rates, we pay those additional water rates as well. And chemicals for the pool, we buy chemicals in order to support Los Baños. When we have those increased costs, it's up to the department to figure out how to absorb those costs. And we do it through 2 ways. We do it through underfunding something else, changing where our funding priorities are, and also because the cost of providing that service, sometimes the fee goes up in order to offset that cost. So our fees, we've got 13 categories. Within those, we charge net resident and non-resident rates. That depends. And as I mentioned earlier, it's for programs, service agreements, activities, classes, facility rentals, and leases. For this new fiscal year, we're proposing 9 new fees, and those fees are related largely to new programs. That's why they're new. We are discontinuing, restructuring, or consolidating 55 of our fees, and then we have increases or decreases to 71 of those fees. You have a copy of the lovely fees and charges document in your staff report. We're only going to focus on a few that we anticipate would be of most interest to the Commission, and also give a good opportunity to explain sort of the rationale behind our recommendations. So for example, some examples of our fee changes going into 24 are lease agreements with nonprofits that are housed in our neighborhood centers. The increase is proposed at a 4% increase. And that helps us offset our higher operating costs for those buildings, whether it's custodial service, water, landscaping. For our summer camps, we're proposing an average increase of about 11%, and the range is from low to high. It actually, to a large extent, has to do with staffing costs. And we've been talking to the commission, just like so many organizations and businesses have been realizing that the cost of staffing has gone up. In order to attract the staff, we have to pay them a wage that makes them want to be able to work for us. Some of the camps are longer than they were, and then the number of field trips offered. So there's different things that are going on that mix up the activities and the participation and the opportunity for a camper, which can lead to increased costs. As I said in the beginning of the presentation, we have a lot of independent contractors, and we have independent contractors that provide camps. And so they're the ones that are also setting those fees. And then we're playing a role of advertising and managing their registrations. So we have to be mindful of what they need in order to be a successful operator, because otherwise they may not want to operate the program at all. And then facility rental fees, we're proposing a 5% average increase. Again, similarly offsetting operating costs for custodial services, because we hire custodians, security services, water, and also the landscape assistance that we get, which we do by contract. Other fee changes that we have is we are looking at our court fees. We've had 2 different fees for tennis and pickleball. We are proposing a combined fee that whether you play tennis or tennis and pickleball, which is entirely possible under this arrangement rather than having to have 2 annual permits, that either tennis or pickleball players that purchase an annual permit will be paying $139 for the entire year in order to play on our courts. When you factor that out, if someone was to play every day, it would be 38 cents a day to go play either tennis or pickleball at one of our facilities. And again, this helps offset increased operating costs and increased use of our facilities, whether it has to do, and custodial keeps cropping up in everything I say. That is one of the highest costs that we have, and we have to contract out for that. We don't have a team of custodians that's running around maintaining restrooms on a regular basis. We also have court resurfacing costs. For Los Baños, we have proposed increases for adult lap swim. And as you can see from this table, it shows the increases that for adults, a 10-visit pass would go from $54 to $68, so it would be $6.80 to go swim at Los Baños. For seniors, it goes from $44 to $50, so a $6 increase for 10 visits, so that's $5 for a swim. And then the unlimited monthly adult rate and senior rate, essentially, depending on how much someone loves to swim, they could swim pretty much every day, as much as they wanted, for $85 a month, and it's really up to the individual. Just like a gym pass, you pay a monthly fee to join a gym or be in a gym, and the benefit to you is how often you actually use those facilities. Tree removal permits and appeal fee. This is one that we gave significant consideration to for a number of reasons. Our fees are well below the fees of other city departments in terms of permit fees and appeal fees. Staff did a lot of research and quantified the amount of time it takes for staff members to actually process a street tree removal application versus the fee that's collected, which right now is $75. And the proposed rate is to actually go up to $325, which would cover about 50% of the staff costs. When you look at what the Community Development Department charges, and they're required to have full cost recovery, it's $850. So we'd still be fairly well below. For setback trees, the proposal is to go from $75 to $125. Again, these are private trees, and we want to acknowledge that the city's street tree is a city asset. It's a public asset. It's a community asset. Setback trees is a private asset, and so not wanting to have that same standard for a setback tree as for a public asset. And then the tree appeal fees. This would just align the appeal fee with every other appeal fee that the city has, and again, would probably go towards capturing, and I don't want to be quoted on this a small percentage of the cost of processing a tree appeal that would go to the city council. Before I finish this discussion, I do really want to point out that nothing that we're saying related to fees would change the fact that we continue to strive to provide free programs. And as we get into talking more about the budget reductions, we really looked to figuring out which programs we wanted to continue. So for example, we're not proposing any reductions to the Youth Apprentice program, and that's 100% subsidized. We are continuing to have free programs and proposing free programs, whether it's summer fun, recreation swim, many of the programs that are housed in our community centers, and then also continuing to provide scholarship opportunities, which we do for recreation after school, for summer camps, and through youth swim lessons. Just to give the commission a sense of what was offered in fiscal year '22, we provided almost $85,000 worth of camp scholarships and RAP scholarships. Part of it was funded by the city, so the department subsidized $43,000 towards that, and part of it was subsidized through grants that were secured and held by the Park Foundation. Going into our expenditures, so looking at our expenditures, for this fiscal year, our adopted budget is just under $21.5 million. Looking at fiscal year '24 and '25, you see it increases to $23 and $24 million. Equally spread essentially between recreation and parks, and then administration represents about 10%. So here's a pie chart that, sorry, let me go back. So that gives you a sense of what that spread is between the three divisions. This pie chart also shows how it's actually housed in the city's financial management system. So of our proposed budget for fiscal year '24, just under 60% are salary and benefits, 21% is allocated costs, and 18% is supplies and services, and then other I'll speak to as well. When we have increases, as I mentioned earlier in the presentation, our base budget that we get increases from the city, it is largely due to changes in salary and benefits that the city does as an organization, as well as changes to allocated costs, and then and/or other things like insurance. Our insurance fund is grossly underfunded, and the city's striving to really refund it in a way that makes the city more sustainable. Allocated costs, this gives the commission a sense of where it really goes. So largely, these are other departments within the city that provide different types of services, either directly in support of our department or indirectly in support of our department. So for example, facility maintenance is an allocation. It's based on the assumption of how much the facilities division would be supporting the various buildings and facilities in our department. Similarly, custodial, that's an allocated cost for the city custodians or the city contracted custodians to provide base level custodial service. That does not include the custodial service we provide in our park restrooms because our park grounds workers do that work. Motor pool, that relates to the maintenance and replacement costs for the vehicles that we operate as a department. And as you can imagine, the cost for our parks division, vehicles is far higher than it is for recreation. Every vehicle that we have is allocated a maintenance cost and a repair and a replacement cost on an annual basis. Insurance, I mentioned, one of the things the city is striving to do is refund its insurance program because it's been underfunded for a long time. And then lastly, information technology, IT, that has gone up significantly in the last year, partly due to the city's refocus on the value of information technology and a re-look at how it's assigned. So IT charges are based on the number of FTE equivalents that we have. So with departments with 82 FTEs, you have a higher IT allocation. When you look at what it means in terms of our budget, it's about 21% of our total expenditures. When you think about our subsidy, which is just over $15 million, it's about 30% of our subsidy, because that goes direct. The subsidy directly covers those costs. Supplies and services, this is the picture that we look at very carefully on a regular basis, quarterly in fact, because this is what we need to do business. Whether it's non-contractual services, whether it's paying for water. So our water budget is $761,000 next year, and that's water that's for our parks, our sports fields, our swimming pool. And that continues to go up, as we're all aware. We all experience that. We also have extra costs related to janitorial, whether it's landscape or chemical services. We have funding for equipment repair, minor tools. We also pay for facility maintenance that we believe is important. When you look at non-contractual and you think, wow, that's a pretty large number, a lot of it actually is tied to revenue. So I mentioned we have 65 independent contractors. We pay them. The revenue comes into our department for the programs and services they offer. We keep a portion of it, and then the contractor gets paid. So if you took that out, you'd also take the revenue out. And then we also have, in non-contractual services, as I mentioned earlier, we have tree companies that help support us, landscape companies that help support us. We have a security service in certain areas of our parks in order to ensure park safety. So looking at it by recreation division, this gives you a sense of how it's spread out. You can see that our aquatics section and our facility and special event section make up a bulk of the expenses by program, followed by smaller amounts for the other programs that we have within the department. And then in Parks Division, these are our different programs in parks. As you can see, we break it out by trees, parkways and medians, beach maintenance. We have Administration Division, which houses our park rangers, as well as our parks manager and our admin assistant, who is supporting the commission today. And then park operations. I would note that in park operations is actually the funding that we expenditure for the work that we do for the waterfront department. If you look at the right-hand side, you can see it's 27% of the expenditures of this budget are actually going to non-park maintenance-related activities, with the exception that some portion of our forestry budget is dedicated to park trees, and that varies from year to year. So we have responsibilities outside of just maintaining parks and our park facilities, which a lot of people don't realize. And we have both staff assigned to that work, but increasingly more contracted work in order to be able to get all the work done. Budget reductions. So the commission has heard from staff in the past that the city initiated a Vision 2030 process last fall. We presented to the Finance Committee the ins and outs of this department, where what programs are subsidized, to what level they're subsidized, where the revenue comes from. It was a way to be able to explain how we put everything together in order to do what we do as a Parks and Recreation department. Part of Vision 2030 is this concept of fiscal sustainability, trying to place the city in a more sustainable framework for the long haul. So in addition to the fact that, just like many organizations, salary and benefit costs increase, the cost of living here has increased, the cost of the PERS, our retirement system, has increased. The cost of everything has gone up. We don't have, the city as a whole does not have the level of revenue coming in, general tax revenue, whether it's sales tax, property tax, any number of different sources, to be able to offset those increased costs. We do our part with departmental revenues, but then we also have to look carefully, and have been directed to look very carefully about how to streamline operations and find ways to make reductions. So with that in mind, we were tasked with coming up with just under $750,000 in reductions over the 2 years, with the first year being just under $300,000 and the second year just under $500,000. We were given the opportunity to also utilize new or expanded revenue generation to offset those reductions. So we've done that, which we'll walk you through. Granted, I would say, in doing that, we have to be very mindful that those revenue opportunities do exist. So as a department, we do a quarterly analysis of where we are with revenues and expenses, and if we see revenues not coming in, we have to cut our costs because we don't end the budget in the red, end the budget year in the red. We always end it in the black. So the management team spend a lot of time, and I could say agonizing, because that would be true, but that seems a little bit much, really looking at what made sense. How do we be strategic? Because this is the first of probably more that might be coming. And how do we address it in a way that we think makes sense given today's situation and given where we are today, which is not necessarily where we were 10 years ago or even 5 years ago. Things are constantly changing in our department and in our community, and we're always looking for ways to pivot and try to address those changes. So our consideration included the fact that we really need to prioritize park and facility safety and maintenance above all else. So making reductions to park maintenance does not seem like a great way to go, because thousands, millions of people use our park system and our beaches on an annual basis, and we are, for the most part, underfunded. We looked at where we are staffing and what kind of resource allocations we have. We've been facing, just as I said, many other organizations have, it's almost impossible to hire qualified staff and to find staff to staff some of our programs. We've really struggled, and we've spread ourselves, frankly, too thin as a result of that. We have programs that are no longer offered, either because it doesn't make sense for us to be providing that service. The change in the way we have to provide that service has made it complicated. And then sometimes there are other organizations that have stepped in and are doing something that it makes sense for them to take that on. And so we want to be part of a larger community that provides parks and recreation services. We don't need to be the sole provider. And then opportunity to leverage resources, as I mentioned, and changing conditions. That gives you a sense of, these are all the things that we took into consideration. So to begin with, one of the first things we looked at is our golf division. When we transferred over to a management company, we had the assumption that it would really only take a quarter full-time equivalent department person to manage that contract. Over the last 7 years, we've increasingly ratcheted up because it has become more time and staff time intensive. So by increasing the FTE from 0.4 to 0.5, which affects both the business manager and the parks manager, we save that money from the general fund. We also, through the city's allocated overhead analysis, determined that we also provide all these other general functions to this enterprise fund that function as overhead that this general fund's been absorbing. So that was quantified for us, and we're proposing that the Gulf Fund pay for that. It comes out to about $60,000 each year for the next 2 years. So that's a good chunk of where we're trying to get to. Then we looked at program changes. We have a number of programs that either aren't offered anymore, they haven't been offered since the pandemic, like our Saturday drop-in skate clinic. The Adult Basketball League has very low participation rates, and it's also hard to staff that as well. So you have staff working extra hours to do something that's not really as popular as it could be. We're also looking and we're recommending reducing programs, again, primarily consolidate our limited staff resources, and these are programs that are subsidized, either 100% like summer fun, or partially subsidized like the recreation after school program. We currently operate, well, we had one summer fun site for many years. We got up to 2 last year, and our proposal this year is to go back down to 1. And it's the most popular one, the one that we're most successful at implementing, is where we have the best relationship with the actual school site and the school principal. And then they're also recognizing that many of these other campuses have other programs that operate, that provide summer fun-like programs to youth. So we're not the only service provider. For recreation after school, we're currently operating at 4 sites, and it's been a real challenge. With some sites have had low participation rate, which has affected our staff ratio and our staffing issues. And then we have other sites that have wait lists that we haven't been able to respond to because we don't have the staff in order to accommodate those students. And then we are in the 2nd year of a pilot program, Summer Nights program. Last year, it was moderately successful, but wasn't really reaching the target audience that it needed to reach. It wasn't quite in the right location. We also ended up subsidizing it more than we anticipated we had to when we looked at what it would cost for carrying it into 24 and 25. And beyond, the cost would increase. So our recommendation is that we complete this second year, and we've focused it, relocated it. We're working with the Boys and Girls Club as well as the school district to offer 8 Friday night events concurrently, one on the west side and one on the east side at the Boys and Girls Club facilities. We feel like consolidating those resources, putting them in a facility where kids are already used to going, where they can do indoor activities or outdoor activities, makes a lot more sense. And see how it goes this year. We're not recommending continuing to fund it in 24 or 25, but we're completely committed to trying to figure out, if it's successful, how to make that happen. And then in fiscal year 25, as you saw from the earlier numbers, we have additional program changes that we have to make because the reduction increases to just under 450,000. And the proposals that we have relate to both continuing everything from year 1, so that revenue from golf would carry forward to fiscal year 25. We have programs that we're not offering because they're difficult to offer in terms of lack of staffing, difficulty finding bus drivers. I mean, things that just, the program's no longer realistic, and we're coming to terms with that. And then also the junior high after-school sports program, that's something that the school district does. We'll be working with them to transition all the funding for that to them. And then lastly, as I mentioned earlier, we have the opportunity to generate new revenue from program and permit fees, so we are proposing to do that in the second year, and that helps us limit the reduction. So of the 445 that we have to come up with, we're proposing around 130,000 from other sources to eliminate, to reduce the impact to the department and its programs. So here gives you the sort of overview. Allocation to golf, 60,000, program reductions, and then fiscal year 25, increased revenues, allocation to golf, and program reductions. Staffing change. We have one proposed staffing change that we're moving forward. We have a recreation coordinator. Commission members may be familiar with Sarah Knowles, who basically is the point person for all citywide special event permits, because that's something our department does as well. Really, the work effort of that position is far greater than that of a recreation coordinator. So we've proposed, and it's been approved administratively and now goes to council to increase that position to a senior recreation supervisor, and it's funded through revenue. So it's not taking it out of any other program or service that we provide. I'm going to quickly run through capital before I turn it over to Tina. This is really an opportunity to talk about the fact that we have many facilities in need of renovation, renewal, maintenance. We've done a great job over the last 10 years making headway. We've got more coming and more to do because the city now receives the half-cent sales tax through Measure C. There's an increased focus in reinvesting in our infrastructure, and the focus is on existing infrastructure. We're not building anything new yet, although that might happen if we're lucky. So quickly, we have a number of projects that are recommended for funding going into the next fiscal year. More funding for the West Beach Splash Playground, and we're actually refocusing that on saying maybe we should just try rebuilding the wading pool and use that as the asset that the community really, really likes and really wants. Alameda Plaza renovation, we've got 3 objectives there: to improve all the pathways to make them accessible, to improve the lighting, and we have some community development block grant funding for that, and then also to enhance the picnic areas. And Dwight Murphy Field renovation, there's an allocation proposing $6 million toward construction. That's not all we need, but we are actively working on securing additional funds. This would match the funding that the Gwendolyn Strong Foundation has raised, which is $6 million. In 24, we also want to continue advancing Franceschi Park renovation. We're actually about to go out with an RFP for the design services for the interpretive pavilion. And there's also an initiative from the city administrator's office, we've been talking about it for many years, that we need to develop landscape design standards for the parkways and medians, and then start initiating renovation. So that amount of funding has been proposed for the next 2 years. Municipal Tennis Center, our wonderful tennis center that I think dates from 1937, we have a stadium that has been inaccessible to the public for a very long time. The funding here would allow us to do a full feasibility assessment of tearing it down, rebuilding it. If we rebuild it, what is it? And then what do we do with the court? It could give us some opportunities to broaden the court use there. Park infrastructure safety, this is funding that we receive every year, and it helps us just get different things done, whether it's fencing, whether it's lighting, whether it's seating, you name it. For playground replacement, we're proposing some funding just to help us keep things replaced rather than building new, but a new playground, a replacement playground in '25. And then new to the department, we've asked for it many years in a row, is to begin consistently funding improving trails and walkways throughout the city. So it's not just Front Country Trails, we have lots of ways for people to access and use our parks that we could certainly enhance. Urban Forest Management Plan, this has been funded consistently at $250,000 a year for the last probably 4 or 5 years, and this really supplements the money we get on an annual basis. And forestry works closely with Public Works on where to do tree planting, maintenance. We're trying to catch up with a lot of the deferred maintenance that we have. Also new to this year, and this is also happening in other departments, is beginning to set aside money every year to replace equipment, because we don't have sort of a slush fund for equipment replacement. And something is basic, maybe it's not basic, but you see the sweeper machine, sometimes if you're down in the waterfront, that sweeps the walkways. And we have a sweeper machine that's supposed to be sweeping our parking lots, but 9 times out of 10 it doesn't work, and we really need a new one. This type of funding would help us do something that we never have money to do. And then also Alice Keck Park Memorial Garden, beginning to look at how we are more strategic and constructive of doing landscape and walkway improvements there. Central City Master Plan, this is exciting. So this is Spencer Adams Park. This is something we've been talking about for a long time. We currently have the 1235 Teen Center that Powell has, the Davis Center, the Lawn Bowls, and a very big parking lot. It's an opportunity for us, how we might revision that site to provide recreation for the long term for downtown residents. And then Chase Pond Park, it's a wonderful park, but it's always needing some attention. And then also new, we have 2 open space management projects, Hale Park, and then on the next page, Honda Valley Park, and then we always are looking to find ways to renovate our restrooms. A little bit more funding for Ortega Park. We're actively looking for grant funds right now. We are nowhere near moving forward with construction. It's not fully funded, but that's another placeholder to help us leverage grant resources. And then Park and Field Renewal and Irrigation, we're using some of the American Rescue funds this year. By 2025, we will need to continue to do that, and so starting to budget for that on an annual basis. And then Plaza Del Mar, looking at ways to enhance the safety in that park. Very quickly, we've got lots of things going on. The Davis Center interior improvements is out to bid right now. Eastside Neighborhood Park renovation, we hope to finish the second half of that by July of this year. Carrillo Gym renovation may get kicked off construction in early 2024, working with Public Works on that. I mentioned Ortega Park, Dwight Murphy. We're finalizing getting the permits, building permits to build an arbor in Chase Pond Park. That's at Casa Las Palmas. Commission might remember hearing about that. Bandshell renovation bids, I believe, are due tomorrow. So we'll see where we land with that, and hopefully we will have a bandshell that we can use for community cultural events before the end of the calendar year. And then I mentioned we're also putting out the RFP for the Franceschi Master Plan and house renovation. And with that, we can stop, but I think the commission would rather we zip through golf and core, but leave it up to the chair to make that decision.
Yeah, well, I think what I'd like to do is get through the presentation, and then before I open it up for questions and comments from the commission. I know we've got some people in the back that have been really patient. I'm not looking at the adults here. And so what I think I will actually do before we go to questions and comments from the commission is open it up to public comment, and then we'll take it, circle back to questions and comments, if that's okay with everybody else? Yep, okay. So finished presentation, public comment, and then we'll take over from there.
Good evening, Chair McGill and Commissioners. I am going to present to you the Golf Fund 2-year financial plan. As we reviewed last month when we looked at golf capital needs, the Golf Fund is an enterprise fund that is dedicated to providing residents and visitors an exceptional and affordable golfing experience and a very friendly, inclusive environment for socializing and enjoying nature. The goal and the priority of the Golf Fund is to provide excellent customer service, to maintain a great value for the money that you pay, to sustain a higher number of rounds, to manage the potable water consumption, and also to continue reinvesting in the golf course infrastructure. The revenues you'll see for fiscal year '24 are just over $4 million, and then $4.3 million in fiscal year '25. And the majority of that income is attributable to the golf fees that are collected. 60% of the golf fees would be rounds, for rounds of golf. So what you would play 18 or 9 holes, and then the cart fees. The rest of the breakdown for the golf fees would be about 8% from the driving range, 8% for the merchandise sold, 3% for lessons, 2% for other, like, when we have miscellaneous, like used golf clubs or things like that. And then a 1% would be for banquets when we have tournaments that they would pay for food provided for that. As part of the fee considerations to achieve those revenue goals, similar to the general fund, we look to how do we maximize participation to get as many rounds played as possible, while still remaining cost-effective for the target markets. We stay in line with the competition, and then we also factor in, the increased costs for labor, water, and supplies, fertilizer, seed, all of that, very similar to the general fund, and the rest of the park infrastructure comes into play when we're looking at fees. And then also too, what are the capital needs for the golf course? Because the capital plans and renovations are all funded through revenue generated by the golf course. So recommended fee changes in fiscal year '24 that would go into effect on July 1st. They're fairly nominal this year. We're recommending $1 increases on green fees, $1 increases on cart fees. There would be no change recommended for driving range, small and medium-sized buckets. We have range keys where you can get, similar to an unlimited swim pass or whatnot, you have different memberships, to have $10 and $20 increases to those, and $5 to the monthly practice club. Expenditures for the golf course proposed for fiscal year '24 are $3.8 million and $4.1 in fiscal year '25. And you'll see that, the breakdown is between city oversight. The golf contract is really what we pay for the greens, for the maintenance of the golf course through the vendor that manages it for us, but they're direct costs to the city. And you'll see that we are reinvesting and increasing our commitment to capital infrastructure that's been long overdue for many years, and we presented that last month at the commission meeting. Things that have impacted the operating expense this year: minimum and living wage increases. We're going to add an assistant superintendent. We've been operating without one for the last couple of years, and we feel that really in order to make the golf course thrive and to really be a place of choice for the community to come and golf, that's an important role to reinstate at the golf course. We've had increases to the water costs, vehicle fuel, chemicals, pest management and for, any fungus, the different weather really does impact the greens. So maintaining excellent greens is critical to the success of the golf course, and the chemicals costs have increased exponentially in the last year with inflation. And then, of course, our capital requirements being funded. So you can see here the breakdown for golf course maintenance. This will be for the groundskeepers and the superintendent and the assistant superintendent. The water, all of that goes into golf maintenance. And then there is city oversight, which would be the 0.5 permanent staff from the city, the parks manager, myself. And we have a groundskeeper that goes and inspects the golf course and reports back to the city for us. Our capital transfers, and then, of course, the cost of goods sold. Our capital budget, we're proposing $300 in capital transfers as broken down by different categories for purchasing the equipment that's vital to keeping the golf course groomed and playable, so the golf mowers and the carts and the utility carts. And then, of course, infrastructure renewal. We have a reserve account for the golf course that we are required. Our policy is, you can see for fiscal year 24 proposed at $1 million and 1.1 in fiscal year 25. The policy requires 25% of the operating budget and the average transfer to capital. So you'll see it as the cost of the operations of the golf course increases, so does the policy for the reserves. We're pleased to report that our actual reserves, we now have a surplus in the golf fund that our goal is to maintain that, which is why we're proposing to just fund capital through the revenue generated and try to continue to maintain the reserve at above the policy target. And that takes us to our core program and the city outcome for reaching excellence. This is proposed, it's taking place of the historic plan, the P3s, and it's really intended to streamline and really focus in on our efforts on what's critical to supporting the fiscal sustainability of the city and to help us all work cohesively to achieve that as a group. So it's aligning with Vision 2030, and it has 3 pillars. Thriving workforce. The goal of the thriving workforce is really to make the city an employer of choice by making employees feel valued and that the city is properly staffed and that the city employees are engaged on all fronts. Organizational optimization, that goal is to help us identify operational efficiencies wherever possible to be as efficient and as we can as we work to achieve the goals of the department. And then, of course, a commitment to innovation, which is really, it's to become embedded in the city culture. So as we look at the way we do work, we're looking at what new platforms that we have available to us to achieve the goals of the department and maximize our efficiencies in that way too. So we're really wanting to lean into new softwares, GIS mapping, really being able to take our park assets and convert them into an electronic platform and take them off of spreadsheets and old forms like that. So we're really looking to be innovative in how we do business moving into the future. So rather than every program having a whole different map of goals, we established 3 goals for the department in each category. So the thriving workforce goal for the department is to ensure that all parks and recreation programs meet and exceed the community expectations through a workforce that is engaged at a properly staffed facility. So that is directly in line with the overarching goal of fiscal sustainability and Vision 2030. In organizational optimization, the goal is to provide residents and visitors with high quality, safe, healthy, efficient, open space, park, beach, community, forest, all of the resources and the programs, of course, that enrich everybody's lives in our community and that are directly tied to the mission of the department that we reviewed at the beginning of this presentation. And lastly, with innovation, the goal would be to implement innovative, sustainable work methods and new technologies such as Cartograph. That's a software that will allow us to electronically convert all of our assets online, and then it is a way for us to manage all the different work orders and the maintenance and the efforts that go into the work to make those park assets, the spaces, everything safe. So it's a great tool that we're hoping to get off the ground and utilize fully in the next couple of years. So those are the 3 department goals. I gave some examples. Now, as the department goals, of course, each department does have different things that we all work to achieve. Some of the goals are the same, and then, of course, they might be different as well. So here's 3 examples of department goals. We also provided in your packet the list of all of the goals that each program might have implemented. So there is some variation, but for Thriving Workforce, it's to ensure regular safety training and professional development training at minimum of once a year, more frequently on safety training for the entire department. For organizational optimization, we are going to be completing monthly inspections of department facilities, whether it's a park or a building, to make sure that we're proactively maintaining and facilitating a healthy, safe space for the community to visit and enjoy. And then in innovation, our goal would, the department goal is to achieve the revenue goals that we established in the budget through marketing segmentation, utilizing the website and other community outreach tools. And that concludes my presentation of the core and the golf course, and takes us to a point where I believe we're ready to hand it over to you.
Okay, great. Thank you very much. God, CORE is quite an acronym, isn't it? I won't comment on that. I think what I'm going to do is, though, here's what I'm thinking for the duration. I'd like to turn it to public comment. I actually think it would be good to just hear what's out there before we start asking questions and discussing. To the degree possible, let's start with just general questions for clarification, rationale, that kind of thing. I know it's going to be it's going to be almost impossible to completely separate questions from comments, but to the degree possible, let's try to focus on questions and then go to comments. What we need to do at the end of this is an action item, and the action is to recommend approval of the financial plan. There was supposed to be a slide, it didn't get in there, so we have a handwritten slide. And then if we have any recommendations to amend that, then we just need to get them in there. So that's kind of where we're going. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to public comment. I have 2 speaker slips, and then I don't know if there may or may not be folks online. But we'll start with the people in the room, and they are in the order I received them, which might be completely coincidental, since I think they came in together. So the first one I have is Nicole Barr. I think you've seen how it works on with the trees. You come up and you've got 2 minutes. And it's all managed there. You're going to need to put the mic down, I can see.
Hi.
All right, Ms. Barr, thank you very much.
Thanks for having me. Can you let me know when my time starts? Or is it? Okay. Oh, thank you. Hi, I'm Nicole Barr. I'm actually an educator in town. I've taught at Santa Barbara High School for 20 years. And then I have my kiddos in the school district, and I'm also a foster parent, and amongst other things, I just really love this community, and I love the kids in this community, and I love the programs that are run through the city. And this is in no way a negative at all. It's more just to defend our wonderful kids. So I'm a parent at Monroe, and we are a part of the RAP program. And we love it. We love the teachers, we love the people there, we love the kids in the program, we love everything about it. And we just received the email that said we were no longer going to receive services at our school. And when that happened, it broke our hearts, and it broke my daughter's heart. And so Mila, who's right here with the glasses, Mila's in RAP, and her teachers are Kelly and Brandon, and they are the most wonderful people, and we love them. And my child has a little bit of a little bit of trouble finding a trusted adult on campus, and I'm not going to get emotional, but she trusts them. They are consistent, they are kind, they are wonderful, and that's why it's like nothing wrong with the RAP program. We love the RAP program. We just want to see it expanded. And one of the impressions that we got when we signed up for the RAP program was that we were only allowed to have 25 kids in the program, period. They would not take any more than 25 kids. In fact, Kelly, the teacher, was told 25 kids capped. So there was going to be a wait list. We were all fighting online. I kid you not, if you know about the downturn of the of the signups last year, it was like so scary that we thought we weren't going to be able to sign up for RAP. All of us called each other, and is that my time? Sorry. So what I would like is for you to consider keeping the RAP program at Monroe. I do want to say it is the highest population of low-income students out of the 4 campuses served, and it kind of seems weird to take from the lowest income families and give to the higher income families. So that's all I have to say.
Thank you. Thank you very much. And, okay. And that brings us to our second speaker. I believe we have Caden Dyer. And Caden, you have seen how this works. And welcome.
You should not get rid of RAP. And I think this because kids need it. You can't take RAP away from our school. And lastly, AOK cannot fit RAP's kids. So where do they go? One reason is kids need it. Some kids live in places like Carpinteria or Goleta, or are not old enough to walk home by themselves. Another reason they should not get rid of RAP is that RAP is important at our school. So if you took it away, then people would have nowhere to go. And the final reason is AOK does not fit RAP's kids. So then do you have any idea about where people are supposed to go? And all the kindergartners go to first grade, and that means that they go to RAP or AOK. So RAP's not there and AOK is full, so where are they supposed to go? So could you please not cancel RAP next year?
Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you. All right. And both of those speakers are consistent with the written comment that we received yesterday, and that letter that we received, which you may or may not have seen, also had the data on the low-income family percentages in the various schools. So we have seen that. And do we have anybody online?
No, we do not.
Okay, great. Thank you very much. All right, so that means that is it for public comment on this part of the presentation. So I'm going to turn it over for questions, and then leading up to whenever a recommendation. Well, I'll start. And I don't think, we don't need to have everybody dump all their questions when it's their turn. I mean, I think this is good. There'll be some give and take on this. Let's start with the RAP program. That is what has generated the most energy. And quite frankly, when I looked at the cuts, I know this stuff is really difficult. That's what really jumped. The summer fun and the RAP is what really jumped out at me. I mean, I got that page and I was like, what? Because it really, it's hitting not only the kids, but it's also the kids' families, because as the question was asked, where do the kids go? So I would really like to hear more about the rationale for those cuts, what alternatives were explored. If City Council was to come back and say, sorry, you can't do that, where would you go next for the cuts? And then the rationale behind Monroe versus the others. That's a lot, I'm sorry.
Chair McGill, commissioners, we anticipated that there would be this discussion. I can tell you right now, we don't want to do any of this. Number one, right? So that's who we are. Number two, as a department, we have to operate in a way that's sustainable, and we've been struggling. Even if we had those programs today, I don't know how sustainable they would be if we can't hire the staff. And we can't actually staff them. If we can't staff them, we can't provide the service. So we're looking at a lot of different things when it comes to RAP. And I think this is a proposal. If we were to do something different, we can talk about what that would mean, but it would be people, no matter what. You know, it's our budget's 60% salaries and benefits. So what else is going to get cut instead, and who else is going to get cut instead? I would add that when we looked at these options, what we also consider is it doesn't mean it's forever, right? So the point of it being that, yes, if we were to refund this in 2 years or 3 years or whatever, we'd have to figure out how to pay for it. So alternatives are raise revenue, so it costs more. We do give scholarships for RAP, but I'd actually like the staff that implement the programs to tell you more about where we are and how difficult this is. And then also we're looking at, well, what if we have more room for kids at, for example, Washington School? Can we get the kids from Monroe to there and actually make it a more robust program? So with that said, I don't know if Jasmine or one of the other recreation staff members want to fill this in.
Yeah. Thank you, Jill. Thank you, Chair McGill and commissioners. I can add a little bit more, and then we might want to have some other staff add additional information, but I can share that the RAP program is about 50% funded through fees and a 50% through the general fund. So it is a relatively expensive program when we look at general fund subsidies. Another issue we've had is that the Monroe RAP program has had declining enrollment for about 5 years. So even as we looked pre-pandemic, we were seeing a big decrease in attendance at that site, where we have more than 40 kids on the waiting list at other program sites. So we're really seeing this, we're struggling because we have a very thin staffing levels. It's very hard to recruit for additional staff, and we have one site that has declining enrollment to the point where it actually is below its maximums. And other sites that in some cases have 50% more demand than we can provide because of staffing. So as Jill said, we don't want to cut this program, but when we're faced with these challenges around staffing and around funding, we had to make the best decision that we could, which is not set in stone that we would never be back on Monroe's campus, but just looking at where we are right now, it looked like this was something worth proposing in this budget cycle. There was something else I was going to add, and it just slipped out of my head.
Well, let me ask just a follow-up, and then once that cycles, now I do have a list of people who want to ask questions. So you talk about transportation, so let's say this happens. What happens with the Monroe staff, and what happens with the Monroe kids?
Yeah, so we have reached out to the AOK provider on Monroe's campus to let them know that this is potentially coming down the road in August, and they have let us know that they would do whatever they can to add staff to the program so that they would be able to offer a spot to all of the Monroe kids. In addition to that, we have discussed internally, and we'll need to do some more outreach to the school district, but Monroe and Washington's campuses are walkable. And so we could potentially, if possible, maybe through school staff support, get kids from the Monroe site to the Washington site. In terms of the actual staff, I am going to ask Adam Porte to come up to explain what the plan is for those staff, because I don't recall off the top of my head.
Okay, thanks.
Chair McGill, Commissioners, Adam Porte, Recreation Programs Manager. In regards to the staffing that we have at that site, we were going to allocate, there's 2 staff at that site. All of the sites have a 20-to-1 ratio, and we were going to allocate those 2 staff to Roosevelt and Washington schools. And the reason for that is because if I could dive a little bit deeper into some of the numbers that we've seen over the last 5 years, in fiscal year 2019, we had 60 participants at that site. It was pretty equal to how Adams was and Roosevelt. And over the last 5 years, I know there was a little bit contribution that COVID had with it. We saw a decrease in participation there. And in fiscal year 23, the start of this school year, we had, for the first 4 weeks of the program, we only had 11 participants. That number increased over time, and right now we're at 19, and we've been going back and forth between 19 and 21. And so we have to be very strategic about staffing at all of our RAP sites, because we are, by law, have to be in ratio. And so allocating those staff to different sites would allow us to be able to serve 40 more kids at 2 different sites, where we were only able to serve 11 at the beginning of this school year. So that those are where some of our decisions were being based off of for this recommendation.
Okay, yep, thanks.
Tough.
Yeah. I'm going to just go in the order I've got them here. So I've got Commissioner Aldana.
And what is the cost to staff? And you mentioned that it's hard to recruit. What were the results from the last time you tried to recruit?
Chair McGill and Commissioner Aldana. So we have had many different recruitment efforts. We recruit, the city in general recruits through different various websites, obviously on our NeoGov website. And we've had flyers go out to school districts, so we're in all of the schools trying to recruit students at schools. We're on UCSB, different platforms that they have, Santa Barbara City College platforms, so we're doing our best to try and recruit staff. This has been a very difficult time for childcare in general to find qualified, really quality staff. So.
Yeah, and Chair McGill and Commissioner Aldana, I'd add that you may recall around this time last year, we made pretty significant salary increases to those part-time positions to try to make it more attractive to community members. With doing that, we've had some moderate success, but not to the extent that we were hoping for. So it still continues to be a challenge and a bit of a nail biter, particularly for these non-seasonal, part-time positions.
And the cost again? The cost, what is the cost?
The cost to provide the program altogether? If you give me a second, I can pull up the numbers, but I can tell you that it's, as I said before, the fees cover about, oh, you know what? I believe I recall, it's about $550,000 in expense. This is give or take $30,000 here, and we receive about $300,000 in revenues. And when you add in some of the indirect costs, so the administrative oversight, that's not reflected in that $550,000 number. So it's actually probably closer to $600,000 to $650,000 in expense.
Okay, thanks. Commissioner Chang?
And kind of following up on that, how much are you saving by cutting RAP at Monroe?
Chair McGill and Commissioner Chang, for that site, I think I could refer back to Adam Porte, but we have to do two things. One, we've got cost savings, and then we also have to reduce revenue, right? Because that's offset. And I think the savings that we have anticipated are close to $70,000.
Okay, thanks. And sort of a follow-up here. I have no context for what their budget is, but why isn't this the purview of the school district?
Chair McGill and Commissioner Chang, I can start this, but I can also refer to Recreation Manager Rich Hanna. We had a long-standing joint use agreement with the school district where between the two entities, we provided different services and access to facilities. Historically, we ran the AOK program as well as the RAP program, as well as the school field scheduling program. Over time, we have been essentially left with just doing RAP for various reasons. The school district took over the AOK program, and we ended up exiting the school field scheduling program for a variety of reasons. Maybe Rich will want to add something like that. So,
Chair McGill and Commissioner Chang, I don't have much more to add than what Director Zachary provided, but I would add that the school district focuses very much on the school day, the typical school day, and the after-school programs have traditionally been provided by third-party providers. So in essence, we're a contractor providing that service to students that go to that school on that school campus. We've never received any funding for any of the programming that we provide from the district. And if you were to look back historically as the agreement has changed, we certainly contribute a lot more to providing programs and services, whether it's on a school campus or in the community, than the district currently provides.
Okay, and there's no room in their hearts or budget to kind of chip in there?
Commissioner Chang, I don't know how the school district's currently positioned financially. I would add that they did receive funding, and this may segue into the summer fund conversation. They did receive funding through COVID to do summer school, and they've been doing that, and I believe they've got one more year of that. So we've seen a decline in camp participation and even some of our summer fund programs because the school year has continued through the summer. They do receive funding for their AOK program. It sounds like they do have the ability to accommodate these students at Monroe, but there's been no discussions about them contributing any funds to the programs that we operate on their campus.
Okay, got it, thanks.
Okay, Commissioner Lesnar Buxton.
Switching gears, can you refresh my memory? What are we doing with Franceschi Park ultimately? I'm sorry I can't remember. Are we just throwing money down a black hole, or are we doing something?
Chair McGill, Commissioner Lesnar Buxton, the city's been struggling with what to do with the Franceschi House for over 50 years, in that it had never been maintained the way it needed to be maintained, and really doesn't provide access to the community. And as a result, the house is in very significantly deteriorated condition. Back in 2018, we went to the City Council with a recommendation. We had three options. One, restore the house and don't let anybody in because it wouldn't meet all the accessibility standards. Encapsulate the house and then no one could go in. Or develop an interpretive pavilion, essentially demolish the house and take that space and turn it into a usable, accessible space for the community that would enhance the park, but would also, and at the same time would not increase potential concern over risk of access to the park. It's in a high fire hazard area. It's surrounded by residents. It needs to be a passive open space, not an active recreation space. So, and then we're also faced with, vegetation management standards today that did not exist even 20 years ago. The purpose of the project is to actually hire an engineering and architecture firm to develop concepts for the interpretive pavilion, do the community stakeholder outreach, and hopefully come up with a preferred design, and then get it through the city's design review and entitlement process. Where the funds come from to actually build the project, we do not have an answer for that, but we never have an answer for that when we start a project in this department. We start with coming up with something that we think is feasible and then cobbling together the funds to do it. So that's what the funding's for. Because it is a historic resource, it will require significant environmental review, and because of the loss of that resource with the demolition of the house. And that's a cost that we can't avoid.
Commissioner Chang.
Sort of switching tacks, I'm curious about the salary and benefits projections. Trend-wise, obviously it grew a lot from 22 to 23 projected, but in terms of the number of full-time employees and temporary hours, do you have a sense of where the cuts are going to be coming from? I assume majority temporary, but how much on the permanent side as well?
Chair McGill, Commissioner Chang, the proposal includes cuts to our hourly seasonal staff. It does not include elimination of full-time positions.
Okay, thanks.
So, look, I'm going to go and then I'll go over to you. I'm going to ask one, then I'll give it to you. So I'm going to, I don't know if this is what Commissioner Lesner-Buxton was alluding to or not, but this is one of the things that I have written down that I think is a follow-on to what the Commissioner asked, which is, the follow-on to me is that at what point are you making the kinds of hard decisions between underserved youth and a park that can be seen as a poison chalice at times? And Franceschi might be the best example of it. Is the money does there come a point in time where you just say, we're cutting things that actually impact our kids, but we're still going ahead with something up here? When do those kinds of decisions get revisited and those kinds of priorities get revisited? And I don't know if that's what you were alluding to or not, Jacob, or you were just interested.
Chair McGill and commissioners, at this point in time, the intent of the Measure C money is for capital reinvestment, not for ongoing operations for the city. And so that's what we're faced with. It is important to reinvest in our infrastructure because it does provide access for everybody for our parks and recreation facilities. And so when we look at fees, when we look at our facilities, and it's likely you will see more of us coming forward, we're looking at fee policies in terms of ability to pay for that service versus wanting to make sure we can still subsidize services to families and children in need. That discussion needs to happen going forward, and it means that costs are then transferred to another source, whether it's looking at Measure C as a funding source for operating, which is not currently the approach the city has taken, and so it's not an option for us to put on the table. Does that change? That really would be up essentially to the city council to make that change.
Thank you. Thank you. Commissioner Aldana, and then Chang.
I'm positive you looked at every angle and on what you can do here, but if we could just give it another look and make a few adjustments to take care of our youth.
I'll take that as a comment and then noted, yeah. And Commissioner Chang.
Sorry, so just, I guess going back to salaries and benefits, you know, how is that determined, right? Are there built-in raises in contracts? You know, I'm seeing a 26% increase in salary from 22 to 23. You're estimating a 7% increase. And, you know, 5%, like, you know, can you talk about the mechanisms of those increases? I mean, I know the, you know, cost of food and cost of everything has gone up, but, you know, what goes into it?
Certainly. Chair McGill, Commissioner Chang, we do not put those numbers in our budget. The finance department does. What I can share is the city has 3 labor unions and labor union agreements that have built in cost of living increases. We also have a fairly expensive health care system like any employer does these days. It's very expensive to provide health care to employees. And then for the next 2-year cycle, the city is in the process of doing what it calls a compensation and classification study. And so within that, there's the assumption that there will be changes to salary and benefits based on classification changes. There may be employees that are significantly underpaid and some that are paid market or above market, and the study is supposed to determine that. And at that point, so for example, whatever you see for salaries and benefits today, it doesn't mean that every employee is going to get a set amount of increase next year. It'll depend on the results of the study. So it's a placeholder. And then again, the benefit costs have to do both with healthcare, but they also have to do with our PERS costs, so our retirement costs. So the city contributes, but employees also contribute. And there's plenty of stories out there about how CalPERS is underfunded, and so part of what the city has to do is try to close that gap in order to be able to actually fund its pension system. So part of what we're doing with both the insurance fund, but also looking at our pension fund and how to get to the point where our pension fund is more fully funded. And so how do you do that? It's through your operating budget, and then what does that mean? If you don't have the revenues to cover that, you make reductions.
Got it, thanks.
Can I add, Chair McGill and Commissioner Chang, the other thing you're seeing, the big jump between fiscal years is actually related largely due to COVID sort of mandates we had to hold positions vacant during the COVID pandemic. And so it looks like a 26% jump up because we're now able to refill positions. I believe we held at least 7 full-time positions vacant during the past fiscal years.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, I'd like to talk about fees. It's a real balancing act, isn't it? People should pay for the services that they're asking for, but at the same time, we are paying because we pay taxes. And most of them make a whole lot of sense. You know, costs are going up, everything's going up. The one that I'd just like to explore a little bit is the tree removal fee. I mean, I actually have no problem with there being a difference between the setback tree and the street tree application fee. That kind of makes sense. One's a private asset and one's a city asset, and it's a bigger ask to take out a city asset. But twofold concern. One is that it will generate bad behaviors, which is that just the trees disappear one day. But the the other is that it just starts to, in a city that is not exactly known for low permit fees and low bureaucracy, it's just kind of exacerbating the problem. I don't, and the $800, I know it gets us in line with the rest of the departments, but the $800 appeal fee is kind of like well, basically that just says, would you just please just go away, is what that says to me. That's pretty steep. And it seems like it's a big ask when you're asking people to actually actively engage in their city regulatory agencies. The street tree fee, whatever the fund, particularly if it's going to go up dramatically, the one thing I think that most people don't know, I didn't know till relatively recently, is that you can actually have a conversation about your tree and maybe not go through this whole process at all. If the tree is deemed to be on its way out, then it will be dealt with actually quite efficiently. But if there's going to be a very, very, very steep fee for an application to remove a street tree, then certainly, and this would add, this adds, but there's certainly, I would think, needs to be some kind of loop where that is addressed upfront and proactively as to whether or not this application is even needed. But I am concerned. This is a very, very high-cost city. We all, residents, everybody who lives and works and visits here pays high taxes one way or another, and part of those taxes, you expect services to come with those taxes, and that's where that balance between how much extra do you charge comes in. Recognizing that I'm saying this on the heels of saying don't cut youth programs. So, I recognize both sides of the mouth moving at once. I know it's difficult, but it did stand out to me. What kind of behaviors do you drive? I'm not sure, do you want to answer now, or Nicole, do you want to jump in? Because I think you want to ask about the same thing.
Mm-hmm.
Why don't we take Commissioner Clark's question or comment, because you probably, suspect you can bundle.
So I wasn't taken aback so much by the permits to remove the trees as I was the cost increase to appeal to city council. I feel like in our city, people take their trees because it's on a lot of times on their personal property very seriously. It's their home. And what we're basically saying is that the haves can have another chance to control, their trees and their property. But those that don't have, it's inequitable. They're not going to be able to pay an $800 fee to talk to city council about that. And I feel like our street tree advisory committee, they are really phenomenal, intelligent, well-informed individuals, but they're human beings. And so I think that everybody has a chance to appeal to city council, and they should not have to not do so because they can't afford to.
Yeah, and there's not that many appeals, to be honest. We're not talking a lot here. Okay.
Yeah.
All right, Chair McGill, Commissioner Clark, I will take a stab at answering or kind of speaking to all of those questions and comments, and I might miss a few. So we spent a lot of time thinking about what these fees should be, and it's been quite a while. I want to say it was 2013. It's close to 10 years, I believe, since the fee has been adjusted. So it was $75.
50.
I'm sorry.
I think I paid 50 when I did mine in 2017.
Okay. It's been a while, I'll say that at least. And so it was time to take a look at it, and we immediately saw this difference between setback trees and street trees. A street tree is a city asset, and we do want to encourage people to reach out to the urban forestry team. Some of the things that I'm sure you all have seen are certain times people come with a removal request because they feel like the tree is really overgrown and hasn't been well tended, and it frankly puts the forestry team in a bit of a bind because they can't really do any service on that tree until it makes its way all the way through this process. So they might agree that there's a tree that should get trimmed, But now that there's a request, a removal request in, it's going to be 6 months before they're able to tackle it. We'd like to get people to come directly to the city arborist and the forestry program with the concerns that they have around street trees. Another factor to consider is really there isn't, street trees should only be removed when there really is no other, either the tree is diseased, it's dying, it's somehow dangerous in one way or another, or there's some kind of development that's occurring on site. And so yes, we do have very high fees in a lot of program areas, but when we're thinking about development-related fees, it seems reasonable to try to recover a certain amount of that fee. And as Jill mentioned, it's about 50% is what we estimate this covers. When you think about the fee for a setback tree, that is a private tree that a property owner is obliged to maintain on their own. We can't help them with that. And so it does not seem, even though we recognize a lot of value in the private trees across the city, and that's why we regulate them, we also realize, recognize that it could be a burden to have a fee that's very high for people to come and make that request to remove a setback tree. Again, though, I will emphasize that if the tree is dead, dying, diseased, dangerous, if the fire department says you need to take this tree down for, defensive space needs and so on, you can get essentially a free permit by just giving a call to the urban forestry program. So it's really when you have development on your property, when you, for the reasons that are outlined when you make a determination about private trees. So we did make a big jump up from 75 to 125, but we think it's still a price that is approachable for most community members when they do have a tree request that can't be accommodated by our city arborist on the spot. And then again, in looking at the council appeal fee, that one is a big jump. It's also a incredible amount of hours that city staff and city council spends in order to hold that hearing. And so we're trying to cover, some portion of that cost. And when we looked across the city at other appeal fees, we were, at 1/8 of what they're charging. So that's where it comes. I recognize that it is a big jump, and we were really simply just trying to get in line to make sure that we're being good stewards of the city's, city's staff time.
Chair McGill, if I could just add, we don't have our performance measures before you, but we respond to 1,000 service requests a year. And most of them never even, get to the commission. So we would rather people reach out to us and they get a lot of service for free, essentially, because anyone's tax dollar really does very little to go towards the maintenance of a city street tree. But we care about our urban forest. And then when people want to develop their property and move their driveway, it's their choice to make that change in their property. And if it involves a city asset, because they also have to put the sidewalk back in. And so there's other things someone has to do within the public right-of-way when they want to redevelop their property. There's a balancing act, and we understand that it seems like a lot, but even when we think of the appeal fees, we probably spend somewhere like 4 times that in staff time for something like that. And the question is when you look at the appeals and the basis of those appeals, we actually don't have that many on it.
No, we don't.
We don't.
No.
We don't. And I think we have a very highly skilled, knowledgeable forestry staff. They're all certified arborists, that people get great advice, and we're as accommodating as we possibly can be given workload. So I think when we think of all those things, I think we're pretty high service already, irrespective of whether someone asks to submits a tree removal permit application.
Okay. Yeah, the $800 is still, it's still bugging me. I absolutely understand, and I absolutely understand totally that if people know to reach out, they're going to get a lot of help.
Yeah, and Chair McGill, I will, and Commissioners, I will add, it's something that we have put on our marketing coordinators list. You know, really, we've been working to do a lot more outreach around our urban forest, and this is one of those areas that we want to tackle, so people know that they can reach out directly. And, you know, a lot of the advice and guidance they're going to get is free.
Okay. Thanks. I'm sorry, I was move it to I have Commissioner Chang, then Commissioner Aldana.
Yeah, on the other hand, I'm in total support of these increases. I think we should jack up these prices to 1,000. I'm not running for office. You're welcome. Yeah, I mean, today I learned that the median income of a family in Santa Barbara is what, $100,000. So like a 1% for a tree appeal is not that bad to me. But then again, just I think given the trees that I've seen come across our desk, the people who may be appealing will likely be able to afford it. So I think it makes a lot of sense to try and kind of at least meet the costs of what you're spending on this. And if it does prove to be too big a hurdle, as you said, they'll probably look for other ways of getting this done instead of hopefully, just chopping the tree down themselves, although that would be really suspicious. They, submitted a tree removal, it was rejected, and the tree disappeared. So yeah, I'm in support of it, and I think you should, continue sort of finding ways to make the prices kind of make sense.
And that is the very good reason you have more than one person on commissions. And Commissioner Aldana.
Yeah, on the tree removal, I believe it was mentioned that there's a $750 cost for staff time. If you can give me a little breakdown or define it a little bit.
Chair McGill and Commissioner Aldana, our urban forestry program put together an estimate of how much staff time it takes for it's the city arborist and the administrative support staff that's in the urban forest program to put together each of the tree removal requests that you see, bring it forward here to Parks and Rec Commission, host the Street Tree Advisory Committee meeting, and prepare any other reports that they need to do. So that comes out to about, I think it was $610 in terms of staff time. And it's around 6 hours, I believe, of staff time.
And if I could just add, that's an average. I think the commission has asked for trees to go back for further review, has asked that staff provide homeowners additional assistance. We do try to go above and beyond, so that is probably a conservative number.
Thanks, yeah.
Thank you.
You're almost definitely right. Okay, so I am not seeing any more, I've got lots of notes, but it's just really kind of, I think the general themes are the general themes, and you're hearing them. It's really, what I'm hearing is conversation, not necessarily agreement, but conversation, and some levels of comfort or discomfort around fee structures and what the implications are, and then probably an concern about impact on the people who need it most, which are youth. So the impact on youth services and those programs, where not only the kids, but parents of kids depend to some degree or another on programming from Parks and Rec. So with that, the action item is recommending approval of what we've heard, and the language that we don't have in front of us, but I have in front of me, and I have a slightly revised version of what you all have. So if we are agreed, it would be probably best if I would be the one to read it in, because I've got the updated version. And the language that is being proposed is that the commission recommends approval of the proposed financial plan for fiscal year 24 and 25, including the general fund, Gulf Fund, capital program, and fees and charges schedule. So that is the recommendation. We can support that as written. We can make any changes. We don't need, or we can not support it. You know, where I'm prepared to support it. I think it is difficult. I think some hard some difficult proposals have been made, and you know, notwithstanding a comment that you made a bit earlier, Director Zachary, I think once these things go away, it's very hard for them to come back because the money never comes back. I mean, there's only one direction this seems to be going. So if I was to suggest anything, it would be a recommendation or a comment that that certainly I believe, and I think from what I'm hearing the commission believes, is that to wherever possible and to the degree possible, minimize all impacts to youth programs, including redirecting resources, looking at consolidating in a way that none of the people that were impacted, you know, that there's mitigations for those people that are mitigated, mitigations for those people who are impacted that are acceptable. Does that?
Do I second that? Is that a recommendation?
If you can repeat it, you can second it.
Second what she said.
Okay, let me try that again. So we recommend approval of the proposed financial plan, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, with the further recommendation that the department review impacts to, reduce the impacts to youth programs as much as possible, and provide, where they can't, they provide mitigations to the impacted individuals, something like that. Does that work?
Sure. I would second that.
Okay. Does that work as a motion for you?
Chair McGill, we understand what you're suggesting, and I
Okay.
think we take your suggestion to heart. We struggle with this. We have more work that I think we can do. Our goal is to, you know, serve the community to the extent we can, and if it's not us, to see how we can leverage others. And that's one thing that we've been talking about a lot, because it can be that other organizations can do just as well, and that it's not the city structure that makes it more complicated.
Yeah, and that might.
We do have more service providers. Fun in the Sun, for example, by United Way, operates on school campuses. There's different things out there that we can do more to be able to come back to you and let you know where we're trying to leverage those resources.
And that to me would fall under the umbrella of mitigating the impacts to the affected individuals. That's the language. Mitigate impacts to affected individuals, you know, acceptable mitigations to impacted individuals. Okay, we got Commissioner Aldana, then Commissioner Clark.
Yes, it was mentioned it was a suggestion, but is that a suggestion or a motion?
To me, I'm putting that in as a motion, that we actually, you know, approve, but with the further recommendation with what I said.
Okay, and can it be repeated one more time? No.
God. Okay, here we go.
Do you want to specifically say summer fun and rap?
Well, I think it's big, yeah, because when you start the mitigations, it starts, And I'm also concerned about fiscal year '25 and what we're going to see in fiscal year '25, where this is going. So but if you want to put that in. Okay, so we recommend approval of the proposed financial plan for fiscal year '24 and '25, including the general fund, golf fund, capital program, and fees and charges schedule. Further recommend that the department reduce impacts to youth programs as much as possible, and where it is not possible, provide acceptable mitigations to the impacted individuals. Did I get closer? Yes, and that's what, and we have a second? Okay, great. And then we have a Nicole Clark.
I just know we're going to vote and then adjourn, so I think this is my 8th year doing this, and every year I'm just in awe, like, of how much work and thought you put into this. Like, you preemptively answer all of our questions, your hearts are in the right places. Like, I go home depressed every year after this meeting, and I can't imagine what it does to you guys, so thank you for your tenacity and persevering to, like, put our community and its people first. Thanks so much. I couldn't do what you guys do.
Yes, I mean, there's no question that you guys are totally guided by community spirit and community, really, really, you put community first. Commissioner Lesnar Buxton.
Yes, I echo, it's a tough job, and I really commend you for it. The only thing, and I feel like a hypocrite because I use this, is don't pay too much attention to people on next door. They're shouting their breath off and criticizing people without knowing them and trying to get provoke people. So if you can remind town so that we meddle instead of people online who are just there to cause hate and division. If I was to read everything on Nextdoor, I would think this city is the worst city in America, and it's 180 degrees the opposite. I love living here, and I love the Parks Department. Thank you very much.
Oh, amen to that. We've had that conversation, haven't we? Yes. Okay, I think we have a motion. I think we've got enough discussion. Nobody's lit up. So I think we can vote. And you got it. Thank you. Thank you, guys. Thank you. Yeah. It's a slog every year, but these are never easy. That is it. We have no old business, so we are adjourned.